thank Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. The time is 9:35 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect that we have Commissioners Briggs, Bonner, and Calanche, and we have a quorum. Mr. President?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item number 3 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first. Then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways outlined on the agenda. If you are present in the room, you can submit a speaker card to one of the officers who will give the card to the board secretary indicating you wish to speak. If you are present on Zoom, you can raise your virtual hand and you will be called in the order in which you're presented. For those of you attending in person, you are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. At this time, we're going to go to item number 1 on the agenda. At this time, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge my commission colleague, Commissioner Dale Bonner. I'm sad to announce that Commissioner Bonner's time with us will be coming to an end. But Commissioner Bonner, before you go, I'd like to publicly acknowledge your dedication these past 5 years. Commissioner Bonner was appointed to the Police Commission in 2018. Before his appointment to the Police Commission, Commissioner Bonner had the distinction of working with the Los Angeles Police Department. Commissioner Bonner started his career working as a staff attorney for one of the members of the Christopher Commission. For those of you who may not know, the Independent Commission on Los Angeles Police Department, known informally as the Christopher Commission, was formed by former Mayor Bradley in April 1991 after the Rodney King incident. The Commission's work involved a deep dive into the culture of the LAPD, the sentiments held by officers toward the communities they served, use of force towards Angelenos, and lack of sustained complaints within the department. I can imagine that the insights gleaned in those early years by Commissioner Bonner helped him form a unique perspective on the reforms around use of force in Los Angeles. Today, Commissioner Bonner serves as the Commission's liaison on use of force matters. This work has included partnering with former Commissioner Eileen Decker on revisions to the department's use of force policy and other use of force related matters. One thing that you quickly learn as a commissioner is that policing is very nuanced. Interaction with community members is at times an unpredictable variant. I want to thank Commissioner Bonner for his willingness to review the instances of use of force and to have conversations with the department's command staff about when officers can and should do better, and what policy updates are needed to give them tools to do so. Commissioner Bonner is also very dedicated to the area of Los Angeles that he was born and raised in. He is the Commission's liaison to the South Bureau divisions, their CPAPs, and other community groups, and supporting the Community Safety Partnership Bureau as it has grown since its creation in 2020. He also represents the Commission at Department's weekly crime briefings. He has led the Department in creating a repository for its history and ensuring that recruits in the Academy are taught the history of the organization they are soon to join. Commissioner Bonner is perhaps best known for his thorough analysis of the Department and his extensive questioning of the Department in Commission meetings. Let's chat about that for a moment. No, maybe not. I will say that Commissioner Bonner makes sure that the Department and the Commission engages in an involving dialogue about both the Department's triumphs and our shortcomings, what is important work. We cannot move the needle of progress in policing forward if we do not force ourselves to look in the mirror. Commissioner Bonner, we thank you for always being willing to insist that we have tough conversations and push ourselves both as a commission and organization to ensure the department continues to progress in its protection and collaboration with communities. I join the rest of the commission to thank you for your selfless and tireless service to our city. I want to thank you for your devoted service to the city for these past 5 years. You will be missed. Thank you, sir.
Can I make a few remarks?
Sure.
So, I can't top what Commissioner Briggs just said, but I just want to thank you, personally thank you for the learning, the dialogue, the questions you've asked. You're one of the smartest persons that I know, and I've mentioned that to you several times. You're the person that reads every single thing that comes before us and maybe reads it like 3 or 4 times. You ask very important, poignant questions. I know there's these Tuesday meetings, but we do so many meetings outside of these Tuesday meetings, and I know you probably do the most. And attend the ComStat. We worked on the DEI committee when I first joined the commission. You're a great sounding board, and I just want to thank you for all your service. I think the commission is gonna miss you. The department's gonna miss you. I know that you're still very committed to this work, so I know that you will contribute outside of the commission, and I'm just sorry to see you leave. But now you have some of your free time back. But thank you so much, and thank you for all your service.
At this time, I'd like to go to item 2 on the agenda, the Chief of Police's report. Good morning, Chief Moore.
Commissioner President Briggs, Commissioner Kalanchi, Commissioner Bonner, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Mark Smith with the Office of Inspector General, and Mr. T. Fink. As I do each week, I'll speak briefly regarding our COVID-19, its impact on our workforce, as well as significant events and instances, crime statistics, and personnel strength. Let me begin with, while I've made earlier remarks regarding Commissioner Bonner, your tenure with us and my appreciation personally and on behalf of the department, I want to just continue in the theme of those remarks. You and I assumed our roles, if you will, at nearly the identical time, nearly 5 years ago, with my appointment as chief and your appointment as a police commissioner. And I remember those early days pre-COVID where our morning cafe, the meeting and prior to these meetings, would have breakfast and we'd talk about the issues of the day and the ambitions that you faced as well as I did in the sense of taking these positions on and the improvements that we sought to see in our department operations and relationships with our community as well as in our internal operations in this. And with that, neither one of us, I think, knew what was about to hit us just a short time later with the COVID crisis and its impact on all aspects of our existence. What I've been impressed upon during this entire time, though, is your North Star didn't change. Though we would have the inability to meet in person, we'd have the inability to have those type of interactions, you stay fully committed on the agenda of reforms. and on the agenda of backing officers as well. And while many at times will see the nature of your questioning as challenging, or perhaps someone would choose to interpret it as a negative, I saw it as your commitment to, in a deep thought manner, to untangle messy issues and to try to look at them from a perspective that perhaps others hadn't, as a means of identifying strategies that would move us forward and allow us to see progress. I think you've achieved that, but yet at the same time, I'm saddened to see you go. It is critically important that as a commission of 5 independent individuals, that we have individuals that are just that, independent in thought and committed to the oversight of this organization in a productive manner, in a manner that encourages, recognizes, and acclaims the outstanding work that our people engage in every single day, while also not glossing over the instances in which we fall short, which obviously by all of us is far too often. But in that balance and encouraging what is one of the hardest professions in which to achieve success, encouraging the hearts of our people, your work has been, I believe, a net benefit or net contribution. Now, many times as we do these functions, we look back and we wonder, how will you be remembered? I will say that for me, first of all, I hope to continue to see you involved in the criminal justice system. I've talked about that as far as your continued interest in seeing fairness and equity in all of our communities across Los Angeles, not just by its interplay with Los Angeles Police Department, but with so many other aspects of our society, including our rehabilitation, our ability to bring back individuals who have fallen away from social norms, fallen away from and found themselves in trouble with the law, so to speak. Is your interest is how do we, and your interest in that area, both from the intervention as well as in the earlier prevention, you're to be commended for that. And you have my full commitment, as this department that will support you in however we can to identify avenues in which you can bring that intellect, that passion, and that commitment to further the work of making this a fair and just society. Moving to my next topic, and that is the COVID-19 update. This past week, it's one of the lowest weeks that we've had as far as the number of COVID-19 positive cases. That number stands at 5 over the 1-week period. 4 of those 5 individuals were fully vaccinated. I'm happy to report that we now have 35 individuals, only 35, that are at home recovering. That's a reduction of 24 fewer officers that have been able to recover, and now those 24 officers are back at work, and officers and civilian professionals. We have no hospitalized individuals, and we have 11 individuals who are still suffering from long COVID, and we hope to continue to see their improvements and them being able to successfully re-enter the workplace. In regards to significant events, I'm going to talk about 4 different topics today. We had no categorical uses of force during this period. In regards to the 4 events, the first is a young adult dinner dialogue series that was held this last week in partnership with the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department. I want to thank Ms. Capri Maddox, as well as Deputy Chief Gerald Woodyard from South Bureau and Commander Ruby Flores, who along with 15 officers from various divisions in South Bureau joined 30 18 to 24-year-olds from those same communities to have a sit down, to have a dinner, to have discussions about the issues of public safety, the building of trust, listening and hearing from them concerns in how they perceive the police, things that undermine trust in those communities by interactions, and then also giving officers an opportunity to not just listen, but also a venue and an environment in which they could provide perspective and response. I want to thank the work of Commander Flores and her team, as well as our Community Relations section and South Bureau for organizing this. We are taking both pre and post surveys of these dialogues as a means of understanding what shifts or what occasions and perspectives change as a result of these dialogues. These dialogues are a series of dialogues that will occur in each of the 4 corners of the city in the coming months, and it wouldn't be possible without the generosity of individuals such as the Wellness, Emotional Health, and Wellness Center there in South Los Angeles, as well as other venues that provide for a safe space for all the participants to come and enjoy an evening in time and gain perspective of one another. Second event is on Friday. I took the opportunity to get a firsthand view of our Metro metro rail system, specifically the B line, also known as the Red Line previously, because of earlier reports about instances of individuals that are dying as a result of overdoses on that rail line, as well as an increase in crime that we've seen. This first-hand view that began at Union Station and moved about the line involved a number of our senior staff. Deputy Chief Donnie Graham was there, as well as Assistant Chief Al Labrada, some of the rank and file, some MTA representatives, and then an opportunity to talk with some of the ridership, some operators, as well as a recently installed capability of what's known as ambassadors on those lines. The first-hand view is look to see what aspects of realigning our existing resources can be done and are already in play, as well as working in concert with the MTA staffing for environmental improvements that I believe will make a marked difference in the safety of those lines. Riders are returning back to our rail system. This is, as we exit the pandemic, we are seeing an increase in ridership. And what's critically important is that that ridership, as well as the operators, recognize and understand our commitment to ensure the safety of the line for all the participants. I'll continue to return to these rails in the coming weeks, and I'm receiving weekly reports from Chief Labrada and his team as to the shifting and realigning of our resources in addition, in an effort to address the chronic use of narcotics, the sales and distribution of those narcotics, the consequence of that on the conduct of riders, as well as the impact that we see when environmental changes are not occurring, which set scenarios up for people to either consume or traffic in narcotics or provide for spaces that become unsafe that are not needed. Those spaces can be restricted, and we can ensure a safer rail experience with the improvements that we've recommended. I've spoken with the CEO, Ms. Wiggins, and we join alongside her, as well as I'm sure the entire MTA board, in ensuring that safety and security on that line is the first and foremost responsibility of the MTA, and that the department will do all it can to achieve success in that area. Third area I'd like to thank is the community relations section, as well as a number of our community groups that came out this past Saturday for the Cesar Chavez, annual Cesar Chavez breakfast. We had the good fortune of having Paul Chavez, the son of the late Cesar Chavez, who came and spoke with us, and it was an afternoon that was we were able to share perspective, our background, our honor, respect for the legend of Cesar Chavez, for the reforms, the challenges he brought to us as a nation to improve the fairness of farm workers, but also the equity of all workers and the respect for them, that they have dignity, they have the right to a fair wage, to equitable and safe work conditions, and how those types of reforms have also impacted law enforcement as we go about in the perspective as we look to policing a city such as Los Angeles. The last issue is today, the SEIU 99 strike involving the LA Unified School District is well known and has been broadcasted in the media, various media accounts for more than a week now. I want Angelenos to be assured that the Los Angeles Police Department is working closely with the school police under the leadership of Assistant Chief Rob Marino and the Office of Operations. We have also activated our Department Operations Center and have shifted some resources to ensure that the personnel that are involved in these protests and demonstrations, should they develop, to ensure their safety. Our efforts will be with the entire with the entire department in uniform until further notice, is that should marches or demonstrations be manifest, which and today in the rainy conditions that they are, we're not seeing that, but should they manifest, that we want to ensure that we're going to facilitate those marches as safely as possible and provide for the ability for people to have their viewpoints heard and understood. Additionally, we're working closely with Carol Parks of the Emergency Management Department with the Department Emergency Operations Center to provide for safety, security, at a number of rec centers across the city, which today are distributing needed foods supplies for the thousands of students that the school meal represents their only meal and many times for their entire day. So today, Rex and Park, I'm proud of their work in making these rec centers available, and the city is working alongside with the LA Unified School District to ensure those centers are staffed, as well as an effective means of distributing up to 3 days worth of meals and supplies for students that otherwise would be at school and having access to those resources. The superintendent and myself, we do talk periodically, and certainly the department will stand along with the school district to ensure the safety of our children, and also to look to the successful resolution of this labor dialogue that's going on today. Moving over to our crime stats, we continue to see improvements in regards to our violent crime, both in the number of homicides, all rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults. We have an 11.3% reduction in violent crime year to date. That, in comparison to last year, is 724 fewer violent crimes. So the net number of fewer violent crimes continues to increase. That number increased by 50 in this last week alone. Over a 2-year period from 2021, we now have a 2% reduction in that number. That includes a 36% reduction in the number of homicides. And on a 3-year period from 2019, we are just under a 1% reduction in violent crime. However, the challenges, as I've said earlier, for pre-pandemic crime levels, the challenges we still have are the number of homicides and our shooting violence. Shots fired this year are down, as well as shooting victims. We're down 17.5% in victims that have been shot. That's 236 individuals this year versus 286 last year. 50 fewer victims shot in the first 2.5 months of the year. Yet that's still a 40% increase from where we were 3 years ago. So our work will continue, particularly in those communities that have the highest level of shooting violence, and in identifying those responsible. We do believe that a small number of individuals are responsible for the large number of these violent crime instances. Our efforts in identifying those individuals, and also identifying suppliers of ghost guns or personal weapons that have not been serialized, those efforts will continue. Year to date, we've recovered more than 1,200 firearms. Those are not including the firearms that were gathered as a result of a gun buyback. Of those 1,275 firearms booked, 212 were ghost guns. These are weapons that are essentially assembled in someone's machine shop. They're non-serialized. The only purpose that these weapons exist is for those that are prohibited possessors to take advantage of, and which oftentimes result in violence within our community. Lastly, in regards to our personnel strength, sadly, we are 27 fewer sworn personnel today as the payroll ending March 11th. That's 9,134. That's 326 fewer sworn personnel in our authorized strength. In our civilian work staff, professional work staff stands at 2,633. That's 7 fewer. That's 72 individuals that are underneath our deployed strength. We've had no change in our reserve officer numbers, as well as our volunteers, chaplains, and cadets. That concludes my reports. And Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, I'll return back to you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, I've got to tell you, I'm extremely concerned, disturbed, and upset as I sit here today. On Friday, I learned that from media sources that an organization in this city launched a website that published the names, photos, ethnicities, and serial numbers of over 9,000 LAPD officers. This act was supposedly carried out in the name of accountability and transparency, but in my opinion, this action was taken in reckless disregard for the safety of the LAPD officers and their families. In fact, some might suggest that it was taken to cause harm to the officers and their families. The organization claims that its database is a tool to empower the community members. Empower them to do what? Harm officers and their families? Allow foreign governments to use the database? Allow cartels to use the database? Other criminal organizations to use this database? You may not have the answer to these questions today, Chief, but I do want to report back to the Executive Committee. What steps will be taken to protect the privacy of the officers and their families? What steps will be taken to protect the legal rights of the officers and their families that appear to have been violated by the publication of this private data? The organization talks about accountability. Will the organization itself be held accountable in the event that any officer or their family is harmed? We need a new policy with respect to release of this information, and I ask that you talk to the Office of Constitutional Policing to propose new policies with respect to release of any information that involves an officer or employee of the LAPD.
Commissioner, thank you. Let me first say that I issued a statement on Saturday across the organization expressing my deep apologies for the way in which this was learned. I myself on Friday night learned of the release of the photographs that, as I now understand, actually were released months ago through a California Public Records Act request or in settlement of a writ following an allegation that we were violating that act by not releasing photographs, names, serial numbers, and assignments. First and foremost, I'm accountable to the fact that while it's my understanding in working with the city attorney and respect to court judgments that such a release of those photographs, names, serial numbers, and assignments is consistent with the California Public Records Act request, that act itself, and is a requirement as a public agency, our membership should have been made aware of that so that they could understand and begin to process what that means as to in relationship to their personal safety. I also recognized that immediately upon the contents of what was released, that there are individuals within that I'll not identify now, that work sensitive assignments. Sensitive assignments meaning that they're involved in criminal investigations involving drug cartels, violent street organizations, in which their identity, pursuant to court oversight and the Constitution, is masked or it is protected. They work in an undercover capacity. Releasing images of members of this organization that have that role, recognizing modern technology and its capabilities on facial recognition, poses a risk to them. The manner in which the images were gathered and released is began a subject of investigation the moment I learned of it. We have now transitioned that on the basis of a complaint by the Los Angeles Police Protective League Board of Directors relative to my conduct as well as that of members of this organization. And I've asked that the Office of Inspector General, which does not report to me, that this investigation be led by their office, by Mr. Smith. And this was asked for yesterday upon learning of the complaint regarding my conduct. Previously, it was my intention to have Professional Standards Bureau conduct that, but I understand the conflict easily, and I look forward to the Office of Inspector General conducting their investigation. Steps have already been taken, both to the issues you've identified. One, to an effort to reach out to all employees by our own work with each of the individual commands, so that individuals are made aware that these images were released. Secondly, for those that were involved in sensitive assignments, that we can work with them to understand what steps can be taken to protect their identity. Now, it is also, though, my intention, and steps have already been taken, to review how did all this happen? And what was a review of, what level of review and authorization, so that we could ensure that we would not do this in the future. The department receives hundreds of Public Record Act requests regularly. And the staff that works to understand what, in our efforts of transparency, we can provide. In other instances in which we think that there are officer safety or investigations could be jeopardized by the release of information, to exercise appropriate exemption requests that are subject to the court's review and determination. That is complex work. It is also, it's also very burdensome work. And so with that, though, is the mindset of the balance of the public's interest, legitimate interest in understanding who makes up this department. We are not a secret police department. We don't operate behind anonymity. And at the same time, there are legitimate public safety and officer safety concerns relative to the nature of some of the investigations in which we conduct. In that balancing act, I am committed to ensuring we strike at the appropriate place, certainly under the oversight of this Board of Police Commissioners, which is assisted by the Office of the Inspector General. But let me close by saying, this morning, an individual posted, by going to this third-party website and capturing the images, reposted on his or her, them, their website, and said, here are the headshots. Now, you can interpret that a couple different ways. And to those in the audience who think that this is a funny matter, we see officers that are targeted and that are killed because of the fact that they wear a badge. You may find that to be humorous, and I don't. And I would ask for the respect of, I'll listen to you later, and I would ask for the respect of just recognizing that your personal safety, safety of your loved ones, I'm sure, as you hold that tight, as I do mine. So with that, my commitment is that we'll move forward on this investigation. We will look to what steps or added steps can be taken to safeguard the personal identifiers of our membership, while recognizing that this is a challenge in our profession that has existed for decades, but is only made more difficult today with modern technology and the tools that are available readily to both individuals with legitimate as well as criminal or harmful intentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Kalante, any questions for Chief Moore?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, this issue that we're just speaking about is deeply concerning. More concerning is that it got to this point without the oversight that is needed. So a couple of comments or requests, I guess. One, Commissioner Briggs, you mentioned that you wanted a response to the executive committee. So I would actually ask if it could be to the entire commission and public, whatever report you're requesting, that it be made to the entire commission. In the meantime, I would love to see the policy for public records request, because I know that's done internally. So if there's a policy, and then if there's opportunities for oversight, I think that would be great.
It's an area, certainly with Director Rhodes and Commander Steve Lurie, that we welcome to. I would invite a conversation first to understand the complexities. It's not a matter of a two-page piece of paper that goes to how do you respond to and how do you adjudicate, if you will, these requests, and what are the internal processes and engagement that the department goes about as we do this work.
Yeah, I think that would be step one for me.
Yep.
I welcome that the Inspector General will do a investigation. That might take some time, so if we can get the policy or some knowledge about the policy or the process sooner than later, that would be great.
Well, again, I would ask that you would sit down, and we'll make that meeting
Perfect,
available
we will.
today. I think that to come back to the board by the department at this stage and to try to address the Public Records Act requests and what that means in its entirety. Now that this is shadowed by the fact that this investigation is going on, I would ask for the patience to allow the investigation to take place, and that we would encourage you to, and avail you the opportunity to meet with Director Rhodes, as well as the City Attorney's Office in this regard, to ensure you, to address concerns you might have, but also to take feedback as to areas in which we can.
Yeah, and actually, right now, it's more just understanding,
Sure.
like, the process, like how it comes to the department and then the steps. It's more
Absolutely.
like the process, not necessarily the investigation of this issue.
Absolutely.
So that would be helpful. So thank you. The other question I have is more on the metro. Obviously, there's been a lot of public conversation and news about the issues on the metro. So I guess my question is more about understanding if the issues are more on the city side of the metro, or is it just the metro in general? Are more issues happening on the city sections of where that we oversee, or is it like the entire metro? Do you know, Chief?
So the Metro line is both a series of rail and bus lines, and hundreds of thousands of people travel on each day. In fact, year-to-date, 51 million people have traveled on the rail line. The rail, it is like a city, meaning that it is not uniform, that there are lines that are, rail lines that have seen seldom, if ever, an incident of violent crime or other crime, and others that develop into hotspots or frequencies of which we see a higher level. Currently, that is our Westlake station on the B line, also formerly known as the Red Line, which we see a increased level of both public disorder crimes as well as instances of violent assaults that have taken place. And oversight of that, year-to-date among the entire transit line, the last report I had was about 98 violent crimes across the entire. That's not 98 homicides or robberies, but it could be a battery, an aggravated assault. But those numbers are higher than they were pre-COVID. And our commitment, and in comparison to other, is a period of, instead of it being 98, it was more in the 70s. Now, that's amongst 51 million travelers. But what we do know and recognize is that there is a sense of safety that's eroded by those individual instances. And then in concert, we've seen the rate of overdoses, people who are overdosing, we believe, on fentanyl-laced drugs that are frequenting the rail lines, particularly during the rainy season that we're experiencing this year, in which the instances of overdose deaths are occurring. I believe the last number I had was 22. And clearly, having a person that dies on a line while you have a commuting traffic can have a profound impact on a sense of safety, but also recognizing that they represent, as a small subset, a much larger group of individuals who are under the influence of drugs and under the influence of some type of intoxicant. Maybe it's alcohol, drugs, or some combination thereof. And so the work there through outreach and engagement is to get those individuals help, but also recognize that they have no place on a safe transit line.
Right.
And that is where working with Metro is our continued commitment to be in a balanced approach where there is an enforcement posture, but importantly, there is a non-armed response posture with ambassadors and security and operators that needs to improve. And then lastly, there are capital or environmental designs that need to change. Mm-hmm. There's processes there or practices as far as design that facilitate or helping hands, if you will, for these circumstances to exist. For instance, just a fare-based system. People coming through those gates should have a tap card and should use that card. It is my desire for the Los Angeles Police Department not to be the quote-unquote enforcer of that, but that does require operators within the MTA system to exercise that restraint. Ms. Wiggins and I have talked about the safety of Los Angeles World Airport. It is a filtering series of rings of safety that, when all are working together, assures for a safe transportation and safe aviation public. I believe the same can be achieved by us working together And under the leadership of Chief Labrada, Chief Graham, Commander Cortez, we are making adjustments because we also believe that we have, in our presence of trying to cover all of the lines, that we need to orient more towards the areas that are experiencing the challenges today and marshal those resources in less traditional means, meaning that the presence of safety in that line is not just the number of uniformed officers, but it's also the other levers of our enforcement that we can engage in for those that are trafficking in narcotics, as well as, again, calling upon community-based organizations and others to help us with those that have chronic addictions and need a safe space, but also need to be someplace other than using a shelter or using the transit line as a shelter. And that's our commitment moving forward.
Got it. I mean, obviously, we're not the Metro Board, but I think there are environmental design possibilities. Mexico City has huge public transit lines, and they have women and children cars, right, to protect women and children that are safe, right? I mean, those are environmental design issues that can increase safety, right? So I would look at what other cities are doing to increase safety for the most vulnerable.
And I want to be fair to the MTA organization. They have already taken steps, and they are working with us on a tag list of what we believe will make further improvements. And your point's well taken as to.
Yeah, but we get blamed for policies or issues that are not resolved by Metro.
So I look for us, rather than for us to get into a back and forth as far as who's to blame here, is let's work productively. And I'm encouraged by the team that we have within the Transit Services Bureau, as well as our partnerships with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and Long Beach, and most importantly, the operational staff and leadership within the MTA. We've got more progress to make, and we look forward to coming back to this commission at your invitation and presenting a more thorough discussion in fairness to the competing factors for resources. But we are very much taking notice of this. But let me close by saying what I said last Friday in a news account. People need to feel safe going, whether it's bus or rail. Many places of the rail line and bus lines they are, but we recognize that they're not in these instances, and our commitment is to change that narrative.
Great. One last thing, I just want to commend your team for the event on Saturday. I know you mentioned, but it was a wonderful event. I don't know how they got the great weather, but it was a wonderful event. Thank you for putting it together, and your team that you worked really hard to make it happen.
Thank you, and I failed to mention, thank you for being there as well and taking the time out of your schedule and making your remarks, but being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Calanche. Commissioner Bonner.
Thank you. Just one question, Chief. This is going back to the Metro issues. And I saw some of your interview that was conducted, I think, after your recent tour or visit to some of the facilities, and you were making reference to the ambassador program that they are building. And you raised the question of the type of individuals and who are going to be recruited into that work. And the question is, between the ambassador program that they're looking at, the alternative response that the department and others are looking at, is there a conversation that has started in earnest that is attempting, one, to quantify the number of people who will be needed to fill those roles across these various organizations? And is there an effort underway to start to identify the capabilities and skills and capabilities, qualifications that are needed, and some discussions about how they'll be recruited and what the cost may be? I'm not asking for answers to those questions. What I'm trying to understand is how serious the planning effort is that may be underway to really make real, the potential of those programs.
So I want to commend the MTA in their efforts of developing the ambassador program. Previous to that, it was essentially ride operators in concert with security, unarmed security, and then the next layer being the Los Angeles Police Department. By development of the ambassadors, they're for the public, they are in these lime green jackets. I spoke with a number of them when I was on my walkabout, if you will. Enthusiastic, energy in their eyes, We want to, though, as we work with MTA, to understand better, their role, because I saw a lot of information taking and information giving in the sense of informing people of perhaps pending events on the MTA line, closures or other things. But I also witnessed the code of conduct was something that they weren't enforcing or they weren't informing people of. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that many people, what I saw is line officers, LAPD officers, approach someone who's smoking a cigarette on a line, somebody who's trying to bring a grocery cart onto the rail line. These are actions that are not provided for. Code of conduct prohibits that. And I think it's important that the safety of that line is everyone's responsibility, including the ambassadors. Now, the aptitude, I believe that they're marketing this externally to attract individuals who want to provide a good experience for the people that are on the transit lines. They need and attracting that, they want outgoing people, individuals that are recognizing they're going to be working in a customer service orientation. So they've geared the aptitude, I think, appropriately. And customer service is one of the best prevention measures, as we all know, for crime. Whether they attract enough personnel, whether those salaries and job conditions are such that they can build, I think that is a work in progress. And I think that's representative across all the alternative services. And of course, we've talked numerous times about how mental health professionals and that alternative service response that's dependent on their presence is woefully inadequate today. And that the collective we as a society, need to look at those job designs, wages and benefits conditions to improve it if we mean to truly see the alternative services strengthened and deepened. And as far as the numbers, I've referenced before, hundreds of individuals is what is needed, and they're needed both day watch and night watch 24 hours a day. We had over this weekend a fire that happened in a homeless encampment in which some 20 or 30 individuals were outplaced and they needed shelter. But yet the ability for those outreach workers and services to be available at 3 a.m. on Saturday night, Sunday morning, simply didn't exist. And so the police department, we pick that up, and we do so recognizing, though, that we need those resources at those hours just as we need them today in the rainy conditions of a day watch. So we're to work in progress, and if we fall short, I think we lose the ability to really see this alternative strategy work. And that's my closing remarks in my news interview was, we have to get this right. And to that end, the league is here today, and I watch with close attention to their 28 different steps or 28 different calls that they believe should be a part of this. I don't agree with that. I agree with the theme, but there's issues on there that I believe still require a police response. And at a minimum, a police response in concert with an outreach worker or a clinician or some other non-law enforcement personnel. But to throw some of those items entirely onto a civilian non-enforcement posture, I think would endanger public safety, and I think also would meet failure and shortfalls, which would kill the strategy or the importance of such initiative gaining momentum.
Thank you, and this might be a question for the Inspector General, but the question really is, I think we have an opportunity to pick up some of that question in the context of your report on the agenda.
Yeah, there's certainly a bit of overlap in terms of that co-response model.
Yep, thank you. So I'll just reserve my question for that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. At this time, we're going to go to item 3 on the agenda, public comment period.
Okay.
Madam Secretary.
The first speaker, Melina Abdullah.
I'm going to ask to switch my spot with Shamika Smith, who's the wife of Takar Smith. This is her first time at a police commission meeting, and so I want to honor her first.
Yes, so I'm here today because I'm demanding the names of the officers who killed my husband, and I want them fired and I want them prosecuted. Yes, Takar was killed on January 2nd.
Say his name.
Takar Smith.
Say his name.
Takar Smith.
Say his name.
Takar Smith.
Ms. Smith, you have our condolences in regards to the loss of your husband. We're sorry for that occasion. It is being investigated, and the officers that were involved in that event, their names have been published earlier.
She hasn't been provided with their names.
We
So
have
if
our,
they've been published, then it would be easy to give them to her, right?
so Sergeant Wilkins is from our family liaison group, is right back here. Ms. Smith, if you can meet with him, I'm sure we can work through this.
Bernine as her representative, you can give the names, right? Is it my turn now? Yeah. Can I have my time reset?
Its time has been reset. Go ahead.
So my name is Melina Abdullah, and I'm an organizer with Black Lives Matter. There's a couple of things. One, we're glad to be back in public, in person. But as we walked into the room, when Sister Shamika got here, we had to hold her up outside because I want you to imagine the trauma experienced by everybody, but especially the families of those killed by police, to have to walk into a room where I counted 46 cops surrounding 17 people. 46 cops. Why do we need 3 rows of uniformed cops? Why do we need to be surrounded by police? What does that do to the family, the sister of James Mincy, the cousin of Sky Young, the sister of Isaac Aiden, and the wife of Takar Smith, all who are here? What does that do? Why is it important for you to waste city resources? You're talking about you're down on officers. Maybe you could put some of these officers out of this room. Maybe they don't need to be sitting here on IG and playing on their phones and wasting hours of taxpayer dollars, right? Maybe that's not what's needed. And if we need paramedics on trains, let's put paramedics on trains. What are you gonna do on a train if somebody overdosed? We need a paramedic. This is why we say care, not cops. Care, not cops, right? Care, not cops. I also want you to think as you're talking about the safety of your officers, because they're your officers, they're not our officers. They're your officers, right? We want to talk about the safety of community, the safety of community. And so that requires that you not seek to pilfer the public person, ask for another $119 million in funding, instead release that money so that we can use it for the things that actually keep communities safe. We're going to be here. We're going to be here every single week. And right now, there's 17 of us. Next week, there'll be more. We're going to be here until we get a police commission that actually does its job and stops acting like you work for him. You don't work for him. You're supposed to be working for us. So this is why we don't need 46 cops in the room. This is why we don't need 46 cops in the room. Your job as police commissioners is supposed to be to represent the people, not to bow down to a killer cop himself. He's a killer cop himself. And many of these people in these roles are also killer cops. And so you need to work for the people and do your job instead of pretending like you're an extension of him.
Over Zoom, we have Mr. G. Mr. G, you're on.
Am I unmuted?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
I'll speak on all of them.
Okay,
Oh,
10 minutes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to speak to the chief's report, which took like 45 minutes. And you claim you have like a really limited amount of time for public comment, but yet you let the chief speak for like a really amount of time, and then you ask all kinds of questions. You know, maybe if you're having so limited time, why don't you give the chief 3 minutes and let the rest of us have all his time back? So let's do that. Yeah, I know the chief was whining a lot about the new Watch the Watchers website. That's public information. The LAPD is obligated to respond to lawful CPRA requests. They're not responding to CPRA requests. So it's our right to have that information. Moving on to the regular agenda items. Yeah, so I know you're celebrating Women's History Month, except the LAPD doesn't care about women. They murder women, and you should have seen what they did last June during the abortion rights protests. Yeah, so abolish the police and let's actually be a oversight commission. You're not even trying, you're just do whatever they want.
Do you have anything further to say? Madam Secretary, let's go to the next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Hamid Khan. On all items.
This is an example how the fish rots from the head down. There's an old saying. Start with that leadership, the president of the commission, who happens to be a lawyer, and who is saying that the department should violate California Public Records Act request, the law that was established in 1968. And what he says is publishing private information. My name is Hamid Khan with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. It is our collective organization that has published this website. We are right here. But we know, as an entertainment lawyer, his only goal is to create salaciousness. His only goal is to create sensationalism. His only goal is to create a fucking scandal. And that's exactly what we do. Let's go to the next person, how the fish rots from the head down. The chief, let's talk about him. He doesn't even know to whom these photos were released. The thing that was published this morning about headshots was from the journalist who actually received these photos through a lawsuit. How many headshots have we had in our lives? In our school graduation book? In our California driver's license? In everything else? What is a term called? A headshot. But of course they want to create a scandal because they want to blame the messenger. They want to silence the truth tellers. They want to attack the community and put a target on them because of their own fuckery and their own incompetence. That's how it rolls. That's how it goes. All the information on this website is attained more than 100%, if not 100%, 120% through California Public Records. Whether it's their photos, and let's take it a step further. There's Liz Rhodes, who is the Director of Constitutional Policing. Here's an email exchange that the journalist released as this was going through a lawsuit about undercover cops. And this email says, oh shush, let me just open it up for a second. It's about technology. And this is Deputy City Attorney Hasmik Badayan Collin or somebody who is talking about the disclosure. And he says, I asked about the scope of disclosure, and I quote, the only officers they're excluding from disclosure are undercover officers, which is expected. And for those who are missing pictures. It appears that there are less than 100 of them, again, better than expected. Nobody's talking to each other. Nobody knows what the fuck's going on in their own department. Nobody knows what's going on with the city attorney's office, but let's create a scandal. Let's get really sensational about it, and let's put a target on the messenger themselves. Do
Thank
we
you,
expect
Mr. Khan.
any
Your
justice
time
from
is
them?
up.
Do we expect anything from them? And I'm sending you a lot of love, Mrs. Smith. But this is really a rotten box. That's why people want to know who violates our rights, who violates our civil rights, who murders our community, and who these people are. We have a right to know that.
Next over Zoom, we have Angelina.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you, LAPD, for protecting everyone at the LA Marathon on Sunday. My son ran with the Students Run LA, thousands of students, and I ran a large portion. There was a strong LAPD presence, and everyone was safe. I saw LAPD almost at every intersection, so thank you very much. LAPD shouldn't be abolished. That's crazy. But I do agree with Melina Abdullah that LAPD works for us, not Chief Moore. We pay a ton of money in taxes. We want police help, but we are concerned about the quality. We see this with LAUSD right now with them going on strike. We pay so much tax money, but the quality is suffering when you get too big of a bureaucracy. They miss the main point, which is education. The main point of LAPD is safety. We can't miss this main point. I'm concerned about LAPD bureaucracy. I asked for transparency for the top brass salaries. When you go online, it only goes to 2021. You get extremely high salaries. Chief Moore, you look surprised when I mentioned Hamilton saying he makes over $800,000. He said this in front of 7 community members and Commander Embrick. I've been lied to several times by LAPD, and I don't want to be lied to anymore by the very organization I support and defend. Commissioners, please look into Urban Alchemy. I know the mayor and the city hired them and vetted them, but I don't trust that they did their due diligence. Can someone in LAPD please vet Urban Alchemy? I think someone in law enforcement is better equipped to vet them than the city. Shannon Pryor, the director of Circle program, came to Foothills CPAD meeting. She didn't have very good answers to our questions, such as what kind of training do they get and for how long. A community member asked if there have been any instances of violence from the workers of Urban Alchemy to them or from them. Shannon Pryor said she wasn't aware. It's easy to Google. There have been several instances even up in San Francisco. San Francisco Chronicle dated February 17th, 2023. A worker at a major San Francisco homeless provider allegedly shot a man in November while on a break during a shift outside a city homeless shelter run by the nonprofit, the organization said. Joseph Perry, who worked for nonprofit Urban Alchemy, was arrested and has been in custody since December. The city doesn't listen to us. Maybe they will listen to LAPD if you vet Urban Alchemy and give them feedback. We like the idea of 15 minutes instead of 50 for somebody to come if we call 911. But we don't want convicted murderers coming to our front lawns or our driveways, especially when we have children present. We don't want a Scorpion unit like in Memphis to happen here. The $8 million contract can go to a different organization without convicted murderers. I'm going to end with a thank you card from a child again. Thank you for saving the city. I think you are good. Love Josephine, first grade, 6 years old. And thank you for helping California. And because of you and other police officers, parts of the world are safe. Never give up. I believe you can protect the city. You can do it. Nathaniel.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Jonathan Foster. On all items.
I need 5 hours. Public input 6B, 5E. I'm going to start where we left off last time. Unconstitutional, ungodly liars, you jerks, you haters of freedom of complaining the same thing over and over again, like because you're children, you have to be told over and over again, which is what I was saying when you walked out of here. So that was yesterday. Today's today. Hi, coffee drug addicts. Hi. I'm going to be talking about the gross stuff about the public service that operates in secrecy. Wanted to talk about All Wet Terrell, civil rights attorney Leo Terrell, who is on a gag order because he knows about LAPD corruption, but he thinks what happened to Valentina Peralta is okay, and then Jones didn't commit murder. So he's like out to lunch, this guy. Won't let me speak on his talk show host crap. So I was talking about the de novos, the LA Charter, the hearings, and the MOUs. The MOUs is the badge tarnisher that is part of what you seem like you don't want. I know it, there's some hard suspects, but the MOUs are producing the racism and the murder. It's its own qualified immunity, right? It seems to be able to get around the law to okay out of policy murder. You need to look in the mirror. Any new commissioners, the same as the old. If you lawyers were real people like Eileen, if she was real, all you lawyers in this town are piles of poop. If you were real, the LA Charter would receive a lawsuit. The MOUs would receive a lawsuit. You would have a better de novo, a better hearing system. This can only be done with a lawsuit because the councils are never going to change this. The MOUs are out of policy murders. When it's true, it's an out of policy murder. Or fake. When a person has a fake gun or you can't tell it's a gun, it turns out it wasn't a gun, but it's still a murder because after the murder, it's found out the person wasn't going to be able to harm anybody. But they're freaking dead. But person's not mentally ill, like Eric Rivera wasn't mentally ill. Mark Rodriguez, not mentally ill. I think Eric Valencia was mentally ill, okay? That is the biggest problem, is the charter is systemic racism, Leo Terrell. 5A, women still murder, Tony McBride. O'Callahan, I couldn't bring you had 3 officers shot with no body arm. You're fired for 3 officers getting shot. Get out of here.
Next, we have Javier Hermosillo. Javier, you're on.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
Hold on one second. I want to speak on the general comment. I think it's important, despite all the difficulties that we see discussed and the anger and the angst. I wanted to give some props and hopefully get other commanding officers and the departments as to an approach that they might want to consider using with their CPAPs. Down here in the Harbor Division, we have a relatively new captain, Captain McIntyre, who has done something I've never seen in all the years of the CPAPs. And I'm one of the founders of the original CPAP back in 1988, before the city, it went citywide in 1993. And what he's done is that he's, he provides for the CPAP response times and a variety of things. Just one more second. And things that we've never seen before. And I think that the other captains and the city should look at expanding the information base that they provide to the community, because I think it'll make for.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Matios Kadane on all items.
My name is Matias with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I'm going to kind of continue on from what Hamid was talking about. And, these demonizations, this misconstruing of the Watch the Watchers website, these framing these public records as private information, it is done because this commission, the LAPD, wants to conduct their racist violence, their misogynistic acts in darkness. You want to be hidden. And we know this from a couple different ways, right? One is that there is no transparency within this body. There's no transparency inherent within the LAPD. There's an active repression of information. In fact, we've experienced that. So we do all our work through public records, like I said in the past. And these efforts to get these public records for community members that have genuine requests and questions about the LAPD are being stonewalled, right? And we've sent a letter about this to Chief Moore, the commission, and Liz Rhodes. And we highlighted 2 things. The LAPD is limiting certain groups, us specifically, certain individuals, other individuals in the community who are critical of policing, to processing one public record request at a time. That's unheard of and unreasonable for a group that represents 100 people, right? You're only going to process one request at a time. And LAPD claiming that every single request filed raises, quote, unusual circumstances. Unusual circumstances have become the usual. They've become the norm. That's what we see every single time. And we know that this department, even when you talk about holding community groups accountable, these are thinly veiled threats, right? In response to wanting to hold the LAPD responsible for these actions. We know that whenever heinous acts come to light, this body does nothing to address them. And, you know, this kind of miscategorization, this demonization we hear from Briggs, it's an extension, right, of the dismissal we usually hear from this body, right? The idea that the voices in this room, the family members of victims who've experienced police violence, people that have experienced police violence are somehow the minority opinion. And that's not true, right? Let's be fucking for real. Let's look at some genuine stats. LA Times released an article yesterday that showed that 1/3 of all Angelenos believe that the LAPD is racist. That's the word they used. 1/3 of Angelenos believe the LAPD is racist because it's a fact, right? And then nearly half of all Angelenos between the ages of 18 and 35 believe the LAPD is racist. So this is a fiction, right? The notion that the LAPD cares about women, takes care of women, honors Women's History Month is an absolute fiction. We look at Captain Lillian Carranza, right? An LAPD officer for 33 years, had nudes circulated of her, and Chief Moore did nothing about it, you know? We hear about victims who suffered sexual abuse on the hands of Les Moonves going to LAPD. And LAPD former commander Corey Palka turns around and warns the abuser, right? We hear about Stacey Vince, $10.1 million in damages after she alleged she was retaliated against and discriminated against for a complaint of conduct against Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher. And there's a history of this, right? We can't forget that in the 1984 Olympics, LAPD's Vice Squad wore pins emblazoned with the Olympics logo that said whorebusters. There's a culture of misogyny, a culture of racism within the LAPD, a culture of violence against black people, especially black femmes, especially black women. And that's the truth we need to remember in this month, not this bullshit. Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First off, I want to thank Chief Moore for his report. I don't think some of the negative speakers comprehend all the positive things that LAPD does. That's also very important. On the agenda items, I support 4A and 4B in public comment. Some of these community activist groups, they need to find some love in their hearts, respect for law enforcement, and stop causing so much hatred. You know, we're not a third world country. And to top it off, we need to make sure we keep our neighborhood prosecutor program. I'm sorry, some of you think it's funny. I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
The next speaker is Zach Sherwin. On all items.
Who is this guy? Nice work back there, man. We saw what de-escalation looks like when the chief of police is sitting 12 feet away from you. One can only imagine what it looks like out there in the real world. Briggs, it is wild to see what topics get you riled up enough to give one of your signature stern talks. You know, these cops are out there running wild and killing people in this city, and you don't even mention it in these meetings. But you did treat us to a stern talk at the top of last week's meeting about how some people sent in comments about killer cops and they used the same language. And you wanted to call that out. That's what you used your time as the president of this commission to highlight and flag for us as something worth your ire. You used the term liars to describe people who wrote into you. Your outrage was evident. Where is the corresponding outrage about the racist and homicidal actions of LAPD? And now this week you break your silence to give us this stern talk that you gave. The degree to which this board is in the tank for the cops is glaring. Civilian oversight, my ass. You are a stooge, Briggs, and this board is a sham and a disgrace, and the fact that you're the president of it says a lot. Kalanche, you should be ashamed of yourself. Bonner, you too. Shame on you all. Briggs, at last Tuesday's meeting, you went out of your way to say that the comments about police murder, quote, contained the same language, as if that's a knock on those comments and the people who submitted those comments. To the contrary, that's exactly how organizing works. People don't have time to craft their individual messages. So they rely on others to do it, but they send it in to show their support for that position. Again, you are an awful person and a miserable tool of this broken system. Shame on you. If you're supposed to be amplifying citizens' voices, why do you make us speak at the beginning of the meeting before we hear each individual agenda item? It wasn't that way before the pandemic. We got 2 minutes to speak to every individual agenda item back then after we heard a presentation on it. Why has it changed? Why aren't you saying anything about it? Why aren't you going back to the old way? Why are there only 45 minutes for people to speak? Last week you didn't let multiple people who took the trouble to come down here and put in comment cards. You prevented them from having their voice heard. You're the citizen's voice in police affairs. Briggs, you said today that directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken shall be deemed off topic and your public comment will be concluded. Last week, a caller called in and got an entire 3 minutes to rail against people who are on the other side of the issue. You did nothing to shut it down. Why is it so remarkable that Commissioner Bonner reads things and then asks questions about them of the chief? Both of you took the time to call that out and to chuckle at that tendency of Commissioner Bonner's as one of the police commissioners to read things and then ask questions about it. That seems to me like a pretty basic duty of your positions. All of you talk about how great Bonner was, and you express this outrage about Watch the Watchers, but you steer completely away from the actual substantive topics that face you as commissioners on this board. Your unwillingness to engage with the actual issues and your cowardice is evident. I yield the rest of my time.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
Yes, I'd like 4 minutes like other callers have been receiving, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Unfair. Chief of Police yesterday sent out an email about this database, washing his hands of the entire situation by blaming someone else. What a coward. What a weak Chief of Police. And quite frankly, Mike, it sure does not pass the smell test to me. And the union has their suspicions as well, since they're calling for an investigation. Mike, you have a history of not exactly being truthful. From my viewpoint as a civilian, you have been the most non-transparent chief. You like to use word salads. You try to confuse people. You have also created a culture within the LAPD to lie and to lie for you. Just like, Deputy Chief brags a lot, telling community members of his alleged $800,000 salary and how he makes so much money he doesn't have to listen to Monica Rodriguez. But the fact is, Mike, you told us Caesar was moved because of Monica. You told this to Contreras and even to union directors and other captains at the time. But Hamilton tells a different story, saying it was his decision. Who's not telling us the truth, Mike? If you ask me, it appears Contreras was moved because he reported public corruption. And who was a part of reporting public corruption? Captain Johnny Smith, who was demoted and moved to 77th. But commission, that was not enough. Deputy Chief Hamilton's conversation with a community member implied there was an investigation, and that's why Smith was moved, and Hamilton is still there. What investigation? I have reason to believe many people were not investigated in said investigation, many sworn. So today, March 21st, 2023, I, Philip Tabby, am calling for a thorough and complete and transparent investigation on the transfers of Senior Lead Officer Cesar Contreras and LAPD Captain Johnny Smith. I have a list of LAPD sworn, including Smith, who all need to be put under oath. Let's get to the bottom of this and show the people who is lying, no matter who it is. It's a shame that we are still discussing the integrity of our LAPD, one of the core values. It's obvious Moore doesn't know how to fix the situation. I have very little faith in Mike, just like I have very little faith in him attending events to recruit officers. He is just looking for another trip to take on the city's dime or the credit unions. Kalanche, great question last week on item 4L about his Glendale trip. Wasn't that this past weekend? With your 30 to 30 plan, how many women did you recruit? I would bet Chief Moore had more beers than people he recruited. Our chief of police sets bad examples. and is never there for our officers and lies for his own gain. No wonder both police support.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mrs. Smith. Okay, not here. Then we'll call Jason Reedy.
Hello, my name is Jason Reedy with People City Council. Chief Moore, you told ABC News last week that you were critical of the Stop LAPD Spying's newest cop watch tool, Watch the Watchers, and that publishing information about officers is dangerous. So if that's the case, why did the LAPD post pictures of your officers who ran the LA Marathon with visible bib numbers? With that information alone, I was able to gather their name, their age, and where they live. And just so we're clear, I'm talking about 37-year-old P2 Nancy Martinez, hailing from Canyon Lake, 56-year-old P3 Joseph Palayo, hailing from Pasadena, and 47-year-old Sergeant Veronica Padilla, hailing from San Dimas. We won't hear a peep about how that's dangerous, but when Stop LAPD Spying posts public record on a website, you get all up in arms about it, despite the fact that the coalition has kept people that look like me safe, right? And they have a long history of doing so. Black and brown communities in Los Angeles wouldn't have known about the harm championed by this department through suspicious activity reporting, laser, and Predpool without their community-centered organizing. All right? So this department under your watch is the most murderous police department in the nation. But we've never heard you call the LAPD dangerous. I've never heard you call the chronic offender database dangerous. What about CalGang database? Wondering if more in this commission remember that 42 babies under the age of 1, just like the one you see right here, were entered into that database. Of those 28 were entered for admitting to be gang members. Under 1 year old, and so I've never heard Musty Mike call that database dangerous. Interesting who that terminology is reserved for. Now, the LAPD has entered into their 15th week of the investigation into Kevin De Leon's assault on me. And I have a few questions to ask. Why is the LAPD ignoring journalists and reporters who have been consistently asking for an update on this? Why does it take 15 weeks to investigate an assault that happened on video? I wonder why. It's clear that the LAPD is protecting Kevin De Leon. I mean, just last week, Moore thanked Kevin De Leon, and Labrada allowed him to speak during a press conference. LAPD has partnered with him for propaganda events, and LAPD is now even arresting protesters for having the nerve to disrupt city council meetings over his continued presence in chambers. I've even had LAPD threaten to call DCFS on me to remove my child for simply asking for the serial numbers and names of officers inside of those city hall chambers, right? Okay, so in 2013, Joseph Zizzo, a former Marine, shot 16-year-old Moises Palacios, who was in the midst of a mental health crisis and was schizophrenic. Moises thankfully survived the encounter. 10 years later, this department put Joseph Zizzo as the point person for Takar Smith, a black father who was schizophrenic in the midst of a mental health crisis. And what was the result? The execution of Takar Smith. One would ask, how could this happen? But what I just detailed is routine for this department. It's routine for policing in general. People think that violence committed by police is out of the norm, but it's not. It's not. So I want to echo Takar's partners' demands that those officers be fired and prosecuted. Fuck every single one of y'all.
Next, we have Jamie.
Hi, I'll speak on all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, this week you guys are acknowledging Women's History Month, which, lol, okay. As a white woman, an upper class cishet white woman, I can say that I'm privileged enough that my interactions with LAPD are pretty minimal. But when they do happen, they're usually situations where I'm minding my own business, I'm waiting for the bus, or I'm walking by myself or something, and one or more of your officers will just come up to me out of nowhere, unsolicited, with this creepy, aggressive, paternalistic, and overtly sexual vibe. They'll put themselves directly in my personal space, they'll touch me without asking, they'll ask me whether I'm lost or if they can help me, or some completely patronizing bullshit in a way that implies they're protecting me, all while they're grinning directly at my breasts and fondling one or more of their guns. When you have national stats saying that 1 in 5 officers has committed at least one act of sexual or domestic violence The only thing I feel like I need protection from is the police themselves. Due to my many various intersecting forms of privilege, it's honestly pretty rare that I'm forced to contend with the extent to which our society disenfranchises me as a woman. And in fact, pretty much the only time I feel and am disempowered is when I have to be in contact with you all. I haven't been harmed by your officers to remotely the extent that countless Black, brown, and poor women have, not to mention the women in your own department who are who are always pretty much in the process of suing you guys for harassment and discrimination. But your officers do always remind me that they view me as an object, a sexual object, whenever I interact with them. And they always make me feel viscerally afraid and subsequently furious, not only that I have to have that fear in my life, but that I am funding the obscene salaries and military grade weaponry that enable them to threaten me with that impunity. I don't think they'd be that threatening to me without their badges and weapons, because beneath that veneer of cartoonishly excessive masculinity, it's blatantly clear that they're all pathetic cowards. Much like every single member of this board who can't stand more than 45 measly minutes of public comment from the very same citizens whose voices you allegedly represent. Anyway, if you want to reflect on women's history and address diversity in hiring, like you're claiming you're going to do today, I recommend that you reflect on the prospect of abolishing your entire department, because nothing else could possibly do more good for all the women, yes, even the upper class white women of Los Angeles. Okay, I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay, the next speaker, Vernine Mincy. Paula Miner.
I'm Paula Meyer with Black Lives Matter, LA. I'd just like to reflect on our commission president's remarks at the beginning of this meeting. You said, when we get to public comment, it is the people's opportunity to speak to the board. In the city charter, it says that the police commission is the voice of the people. However, you all have decided arbitrarily to limit that time to 45 minutes. There's no foundation, there's no facts, there's no research, there's no science that says a public meeting and public comment must be limited to 45 minutes. So it's arbitrary and to the convenience of the board not to really accept the public comment. We know that the demeanor that commissioners show when people are speaking. Many of you are on your phones. Mr. Soboroff, who's not here, often whispers to other commissioners, looks away. And so it really, really just shows what a sham, and really shows why we are advocating the removal of all the commissioners who were appointed by former Mayor Garcetti. And we will continue to advocate for that. I also want to comment on the Watch the Watchers website. We are in Black Lives Matter LA is in support of the Watch the Watchers website. You know, you think about the fact that the PRA, the State Public Records Act, occurred in 1968, was updated again in 2019, and you guys are talking about, what is LAPD's policy? Why did this stuff get out? What are we doing? It seems like you've had years to develop a policy. You know what the law required. People have made hundreds of public records requests, and now you're talking about, once this site was developed, oh, what should we do? How should we handle it? How that information get out? And that, Chief Moore, is a lack of leadership. You know, you've already had 5 years. You know that legislation exists. You know you have to follow it. So, yeah, I'm just, you know, we just can't believe how this is mentioned and how you're questioning how the information got out. And then I'd like to lastly just speak on the budget request. LAPD is requesting additional dollars, despite the fact that you receive over half of the city's discretionary dollars. You still want more, despite the fact that you're not able to retain personnel. You're not spending all your personnel dollars because you have significant vacancies. The other thing we're concerned about is that not reported, not added to that budget every week, hundreds and thousands, almost in a year, $1 million is donated to LAPD. So that's outside the budget. So when we talk about the money LAPD is using, It is excessive. The request for increase needs to be returned, needs to go to the community, needs to encourage and improve community resources.
Next, we have Steve Riley.
Can you repeat that, Madam Secretary?
Steve Riley, you're on.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
The United States is a constitutional republic and all lives matter. I want to thank the chief for his remarks today, President Commissioner Briggs for his remarks, very well taken. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Dale Bonner for his service. He's always asked questions, and it's very important to ask questions. He's asked probing questions, and his service was appreciated. I want you to know that, sir, and whatever you go into in the future, I wish you well and success. And stay connected to the community. South Bureau, I'm sure you'll be doing great work there, and it's much needed. So thank you, Commissioner Bonner. On the issue of crime in the subways on Metro, Chief, I think it's great that you went there on St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Hope you're wearing green. And I think it's important for everyone to go into that system and see what it's like. You'll see if you go to Union Station at 9:30 at night, let's say on a Sunday, you'll see people starting to camp out inside the station underneath signs that are no trespassing signs. The average person cannot use that system when they fear what's going on. The atmosphere is awful. The stench on the subway cars is because it's been allowed to be turned into a rolling homeless encampment. With no exaggeration, and you can tell because there are people dying on the subway lines, people are using narcotics, smoking. There's a general feeling of disorder that needs to change. We really should not have an honor system in the city of Los Angeles for fare payment. It should be a different type of a system. I hope the MTA is listening. I only get 3 minutes. It's not, so let me move on to my next point. 403 of the Penal Code. I want everyone to hear this. 403 of the California State Penal Code is the California statute that makes it a crime for a person to willfully disturb or break up a public assembly or meeting. Doing so is a misdemeanor offense, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and fines up to $1,000. What does that mean? That means that people who, when their time, it's time to hear other people speak, they're speaking in the room in the back. The meeting last week was disrupted and you had to recess. When the meeting room is cleared, those people who are disrupting should be cleared from the room and arrested for 403 of the Penal Code. And City Attorney, I hope you're listening, the case should actually be prosecuted and the person should actually spend time in jail. So we don't have to.
Riley, this is off topic, please.
This is your behavior from last week. I'm addressing it. Do not recess. That is a cowardly move to recess. Clear the room of the disrupt.
And the final in-person card is for Michael Williams. All items.
So first I want to say I take great offense to Chief Moore, Chief Spin, dictating to us about how we're supposed to take the sanctity of safety important. When you have four individuals who've had their loved ones taken away by law enforcement, one of them by your officers. And when I make fun of you for making a hyperbolic statement about something that literally you took way out of context, you try to manipulate that into being uncaring about the safety. Literally, the safety of everybody is in danger because of you. And your officers and your inability to hold them accountable. I also want to bring up from Miss Shamika, who was just here, saying that that paper that you sent, that you gave, only had 2 of the officers' names. There was 5 officers in that apartment. Where are the rest of the names? Stop playing games, Chief Moore. You do that too much. You spin around, talk around, your teeth talk. That's all you do is talk. And you don't do anything to make sure that we are safe from your officers, something that you have the purview to do. The other thing is, Chief Moore, okay, you talk about all these programs that need to be on the train. You talk about all these programs that are going on in the schools and in the parks. Are you here to, on the record, I want you on the record, are you here to say that you want to see your department defunded so that those funds get redirected to those institutions that need to be implemented in the trains and in the schools? He just mouthed no. So you're a hypocrite. You're a double talker. Because you said how important those things are to the safety of people on trains, but then you won't put money behind it. You won't take your money for your officers and put it to those programs. Double talker. Because that's all you do is talk. That's all you do. The last thing I want to talk about is this meeting. This meeting should not be in this facility. It should be taken out of this facility. This is supposed to be a civilian oversight board. So it should be in a place where civilians have access to it, at a time where civilians have access to it, and there should not be cops constantly running in and out of here to present. It should be community members. You shouldn't have an hour of a chief talking out of his ass. You should have community members in that spot to report on what they're seeing with the police, but you don't. Because this commission is fraudulent, this commission is bogus, and it's dumb, and it should be abolished. And I'm here to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and all public comment has ended. Now we'll go to item 4 on the agenda, the consent agenda items.
Commissioner Briggs, may I say something before we move on to the consent agenda?
Yes, Commissioner Clark.
I'd like for us to consider, this is not an official motion, but for us to consider allowing everyone that comes into the space to, and submits a comment card to be able to speak. I don't know if anybody wasn't able to speak today. I just feel that if they've come out this way, they should have an opportunity to speak. And I also would like for the commission to consider community meetings, where maybe quarterly or once a month that we go into the community. I know in the past I've attended commission meetings in the community. Something for us to consider.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. It'll be taken up in the executive committee. At this time, do any commissioners want to discuss any of the items for A, B, or C? Seeing none, I move that we approve items 4A, B, and C. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. This time, we're going to go to item 5A on the agenda, verbal presentation concerning Women's History Month. Can we have Commander Flores and Commander Cortez come forward, please?
Labrada got a promotion after y'all bombed 27th and San Pedro. Didn't you, Labrada? Assistant chief now. About you?
Another presentation from the community. I see.
You got the use of force records for all your.
Mr. Reedy, can you
Shut the fuck up, Briggs.
please stop
Shut the
talking?
fuck up.
Thank you.
Shut the fuck up.
Mr. Reedy,
You're a coon. You're a coon. That's what you are, Briggs. A sellout. Sold out your community. That's what you did. Am I right?
Can we start the
Reedy,
presentation?
can you please stop interrupting the meeting?
I am, yes. Good. Good observation. Probably the best observation you made today.
Commander Flores. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Commander Ruby Flores, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer for the department. Good morning, President Briggs, Commissioner Calanche, Commissioner Bonner, Mr. De La Guerra, Mr. T. Fink, and Mr. Smith, Inspector General and Chief Moore. Thank you. So this morning, we have a very special presentation in honor of Women's History Month. I will introduce a few people this morning. First, I won't give away too much, but with me, I have a legendary lady, Joyce Cano, who will briefly speak, and we have a short presentation about Joyce. And also with me today is our department's women's coordinator, Natalie Cortez, Commander Cortez. Thank you. With that,
Welcome,
yes, sir.
Former Detective Cano. Yes, thank you. Welcome today.
Thank you. So I would like to start with a brief PowerPoint just to go over the history of women within the police department. And then I would like to transition to our current strides in the work that we've done, and also give Commander Cortez an opportunity to speak about the future of women in policing and where we are today with the Los Angeles Police Department.
Please proceed. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So I think in the early years, it's important to understand how LAPOA was founded, the Los Angeles Women Police Officers and Associates Organization. It was because back in those early times, in the days when Joyce joined our department also, that women were not allowed to promote past the rank of sergeant. They didn't receive the same benefits as their male counterparts. And it was then Sergeant Fanchon Blake that was weary of the indignities and non-inclusive culture that women faced on the department. And she spearheaded a discrimination lawsuit that precipitated the Blake Justice Consent Decree, which I'll be speaking on later today as well. So looking at our history within the department, we started in 1910 with Alice Debon Wells. She became the first policewoman in the department, also in the country. In 1911, during that time, it was said that she brought a new face to the department, the face of the LAPD with a new philosophy. The old days and old ways of thinking about women in the department were that they could not be as strong and worthy of holding that position as men were. But Alice had said that it was more about brains than brawn and character. Let me go back to that slide real quick. I do want to make mention too, on this timeline in which in 1946, Josephine Serrano Collier was the first Hispanic policewoman. And also you will see or note that in 1967 is when Joyce Cano was appointed as the first Asian Pacific Islander policewoman on the department. In 1972, Sergeant Fanchon Blake appealed the Police Commission to uphold the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which would allow women to promote past the rank of sergeant. Oh, my clicker is not working here. Can you advance the slide on your side, please? Thank you. I don't know what happened. Next slide. Continue forward, please. Okay, so this is a quick rundown of our many firsts, and we continue to make firsts all up until our current day. Some of these officers and names you recognize. Captain Ann Young, she was our first African-American captain who retired several years ago. And sadly, Peggy York, she was our first deputy chief. As you know, we honored her last year with renaming Northeast Area Police Station in her honor, in her name. Coincidentally, Peggy York was Joyce's classmate as well when they joined the department. Bridget Peterson, she was our first African-American motor officer. She's still on the department today and continues to do good work within the community and for young girls. Next slide, please. Next slide. So coming up to the current day, we have Jen Grosso, one of our first female SWAT officers,
Now, again, we have Officer Layla Ryan, who's joined the history books and being part of SWAT. Deputy Chief Amada Tingrides is our highest ranking woman at the rank of Deputy Chief. Elizabeth Rose, Director of Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy, is our highest ranking woman in our administrative professional staff. Sandy Jo MacArthur and Chief Grimala have made strides as well and made history and have recently retired. And Sergeant Janet Kim, she is still in the department operating as a supervisor pilot at Air Support. So many of our women have pulled down many barriers and created opportunity for other women before us. It's clearly true that we stand on the shoulders of giants. Next slide. So our administrative professional staff make up 64% of our total civilian personnel department, while our sworn remain at 18%. Next slide. Recruitment. I'm very proud of the work that our department has done with intentional visibility of women, showing women doing the work in assignments that women are doing today. I think, and I say that LAPD does this extremely well. We have been very effective and we have been very innovative in videos and social media and every piece of LAPD you can see where women are intentionally visible. Next slide. So this is the number of women that have been appointed over this last fiscal year. 26 of the candidates were women. Next slide. And at this point in time, I would like to ask my board members of LAPOA to stand so that they may be recognized and thanked for the extremely hard and dedicated work that they not only do on their own time, but doing time during which time they take away from their own families and the things that they would like to do on their off time, because LAPOA is a ancillary duty. And it's clearly evident by the work that we've done with our last symposium, in which we had almost 900 participants, not only from the Los Angeles Police Department, but other neighboring small agencies. And I think this is a benefit for the department to allow our women and officers to network with other professionals around the state. Our organization is inclusive. We have 26% men that are part of our organization, and 36% administrative staff make up our membership. So today with me, I have Lieutenant Amira Eppolito. She's our treasurer. Lieutenant Era Burns Johnson, she's our secretary. Deputy Chief Amada Tingrides is our second vice president. And Detective Erica Kirk is not here. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. So I'd like to move towards a short vignette by way of introduction of our very special guest, Joyce Cano.
My birth name is Joyce Takada. I am a Japanese American born to American citizen parents who were interned during World War II. And I went and I stood in that long line at Hollywood High School, filled out applications, took the exam. I was young and very naive. So I never thought about it at all after that until I got the notice. When I got accepted into the academy, it was like nothing I even expected. And my husband was very supportive at the time, and he told me years later that he figured I would not make it physically through the academy, so he says to go ahead. I found it really, really exciting. The friends you make are like, they're like college friends, the ones you have for the rest of your life. I think as a woman, you had to work twice as hard, twice as good as the guys to be acceptable. The guys would see a woman come on the range and they'd all run to get as far away from me as they could, like I was going to shoot them. I did better with the shotgun than a lot of the men. I think women were more easily accepted in '89 than they were in '67. And maybe the work we did and the stuff we had to take in '67 helped that whole process.
Ms. Cano, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So first, I have to thank Joyce for being a part of the vignette that Commander Tom interviewed her on one of our projects to begin to capture and memorialize the oral history from our living legends. So thank you for being a part of that. I know even today, you know, she's very, very humble. She said she's embarrassed.
And embarrassed.
No, you're not. So I just want to guide just Joyce in a little discussion so that we can learn a little bit about you. And you know, you said it in your video. You know, it was something that your husband didn't think you would do it. So what? Out of curiosity, you came on during the time when women weren't invited or welcomed in this department. What made you decide to do it? It's okay. You tell.
Since I passed the test, I thought I may as well give it a try.
And she tells a story that when she was working, there was a lot of off-duty officers that were working there. And what did they ask you to get you to join the department?
Well, they said I was tall enough, Asian, so why not take the test? They filled out all the forms and took it, I guess, across the street at that time.
Yes. And thank God they did, because you have really done so much in your 21-year career, not only as a police woman, but police officer, and then also detective. Can you share what you like the most about working detectives? I'm putting you on the spot, aren't I?
I guess it's more working with people that have become my lifetime friends. It's just that family feeling.
Yes, that's okay. That's good. Thank you. Okay, so I will leave the commissioners to ask you more questions, but thank you so much for the work that you've done. You've paved the way so that people like me can become a part of this family as well. And you're always part of our family. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So at this point, I'd like to hand it off to my partner, Commander Natalie Cortez.
Hello, Commissioners, Chief of Police. First, though, Joyce, thank you. You have paved the way, and you made a difference for all of us and all the others who've also paved the way but also to all the women who continue to show excellence in policing every single day. My portion of this today is kind of looking towards the future. As we indicated, I'm the women's coordinator that the chief of police reinstituted August of last year. And he put that at a senior staff level. And it's also a direct report to him to show the importance of women issues within the department. It's an ancillary duty, and I focus on recruitment, promotion, and retention. But in looking where we kind of need to go, we need to look at where we're currently at. LAPD is at 18.6% women, albeit above the national average of 12.8. We have work to do, especially to align with this city. When you look at a city of approximately 50% women, the large representation at city council, a female mayor, our board of police commissioners, our own LAPPL, and our county board of supervisors, we need to look at how to change those numbers. When a recent article came out in March 2023 of this year from the Police Executive Research Forum, it was titled Women in Leadership, 10 Action Items for Advancing Women and Strengthening Policing. The series first addressed 3 issues affecting women in policing, and this was done by a think tank by PERF. Recruitment. In recruitment, we need to change our focus, it was suggested, from the tactical gung-ho to community engagement to attract women, less about the physical factors of the job. Promotion, looking at written exams, assessments, and interviews that are developed and conducted by men who may base the position through their experience and perspective, and not make it all based on skills such as arrest and numbers, or even look at structural barriers that women may have. Women have a family to take care of, and studying may be limited. The other issue that they talked about affecting women in policing was cultural issues, and within there were 3 things: discrimination and harassment. They said how an agency responds to those allegations plays a central role in defining an agency's culture. They talked about double standards, promoted not just for your qualifications because you're a woman and you filled the bill. And the last one was tokenism. You're often pigeonholed to certain assignments, admin, juvenile, or family type crime posts, or only a certain number in higher ranks have to wait till one of the women leave before another one can move to replace it. So those were the 3 things that was, topical of the paper. However, the series laid out action items, and there were 10, but I'm going to just briefly highlight a few for interest of time. Police agencies need to foster a culture which all women feel included, valued, respected, and equal. The promotion process needs to be transparent, equitable, and free of biases. And the last one, which is important, is collect and analyze data on women members to ID disparities, obstacles to advancement, and strategies to improve. It's safe to say LAPD is working on several of those action items, and such examples include, relative to the first item, recruitment. We our 30 by 30 initiative, we have signed it and are committed. We also, with Chief Tingarides, Commander Flores, myself, and our first female captain of recruitment, Robin Patillo, met virtually with all the women in the hiring process recently. We had a virtual forum where they got to hear our stories, learn about us, and we got to do questions and answers to assist them, motivate them to stay within the hiring process. I think it was well attended and received by all. As to promotion, as the women's coordinator, we had in December a Commander's Prep series for female captains with several of the presenters who are recent commanders to prepare our next generation. In addition to that, Commander Flores and I, with all the Infinity Group support, put on an 8-part Captain's Prep series where all the female presenters were female command staff. In addition, we've had the Women's Symposium, which also brought a nice perspective. As to retention, there is still ongoing dialogue relative to childcare to support both women and men due to the demands of the job. In fact, this is currently being handled at the Board of Police Commission. And also a study on job sharing. Those are just a few items of what we're doing on a regular basis to continue to put the focus on this important issue. I do really want to thank the Commission for their time, the Chief of Police, and we appreciate your support for women. But just a couple key takeaways that I read in the PERF article that I thought was important. PERF noted, cultural issues will demand continuous attention and focus. Advancing women in policing cannot be just a woman's issue. These efforts must have the attention and support of men, or they will fail. Women, we are here. We need to continue to have a seat at the table as diversity brings strength and a shift in the culture. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commander.
Thank you, Commander Cortez. And I think along the same vein, I'd love to be able to premiere a new video that our Media Relations Division has put together, which really demonstrates our diversity, equity, and inclusion in the advancement of women and how much we do value and appreciate and recognize our women. Thank you.
March is Women's History Month. Women have been an important part of the Los Angeles Police Department, going back to the appointment of Alice Stebbins Wells in 1910. Since then, the timeline of achievement by women committed to serving their communities has led us to where we are today. Without question, our profession has made significant strides with the inclusion of women, and their contributions continue to this day. Women in the Los Angeles Police Department make up a combined 27% of its rank of sworn and professional civilian workforce, numbering more than 3,000 individuals. Additionally, we're well on our way to achieving the nationwide policing goal of having women make up 30% of our recruit classes by the year 2030, with last year achieving 27% and hiring more women recruits than we have in more than a decade. However, there's still room for growth of women and their impact in the department, as they still make up less than 20% of our sworn workforce, and their representation in our upper ranks needs to deepen. I'm proud of the leadership within this department, including our affinity groups like the Los Angeles Women Police Officers and Associates, taking us in this direction. Our collective work to encourage young women to come onto this department and the mentoring and career coaching of those women already here is showing meaningful results.
Our history runs deep, and we continue to make strides. The contributions that women have made throughout the history of the world has left an indelible impact. Women's History Month reminds us that the way we have advanced as a society is undoubtedly due to the contributions of women. Women have fought for their rights. They were not given. Some blazed a trail. Others paved the way. And by our successes, we maintain the road. And so we celebrate the mothers, the scientists, the authors, the teachers, the doctors, the police officers, the astronauts, the administrative professionals, and all the other women who have demonstrated remarkable resilience and dared to dream so we can live the dream today.
I am a detective supervisor at Force Investigation Division. I am a born and bred Angelino. I'm the first officer in my family. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd.
I'm the Assistant Commanding Officer at Training Division. I am a wife to an LAPD sergeant. I am a daughter. I am a big sister. I am a proud stepmom. I'm an auntie. And I am the fur mom to rescues and special needs dogs.
I work Southeast Division. I'm a veteran. I'm the first woman in my family to be a police officer. I'm a mother.
I work Communications Division currently as an Assistant Watch Commander on AM Watch. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, and I'm a daughter.
I am a mother, I am a friend, I am a daughter, I am the wife of an LAPD officer, I'm a huge Dodger fan, I am a warrior, I am relentless, I am fearless.
I'm a detective supervisor at Force Investigation Division. I'm a mother to two beautiful girls. I'm a wife. I'm an avid runner.
I am an LAPD wife. I am a military mom. I am the mother of two English bulldogs. I love the outdoors.
I'm a mother. I'm a former Division I collegiate softball player. I'm the recipient of the NCAA Woman of the Year Award. I am resilient. I'm a change agent.
I'm unapologetically compassionate.
I work Force Investigation Division. I am a gardener. I am a reader. I am a caretaker for my sister.
I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a football fanatic. I am a foodie. I am Los Angeles. I am LAPD.
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 I am LAPD. I am LAPD.
I am LAPD.
Commander Flores and all those responsible for this presentation, I want to say, wow, this was amazing. This was very impressive. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to warn you, the bar has been set high, so I expect this for all future presentations. Thank you. At this time, can we ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. Are you open to a few questions? She said yes.
Just a few. I won't ask too many. As a matter of fact, I'll just ask one. Ms. Cano, what primary lesson from your experiences can the women in LAPD use today to help them advance in their careers, both professionally and personally?
Stamina.
Okay. Just stick to itness. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Commander Cortez.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for providing us with some action items. They're not taken lightly. They resonate with my belief before becoming a commissioner and during my time here on the commission. So my question to you and my challenge to the department is, how do we begin to implement them? Not just have action items. How do we begin to implement them?
We are implementing them more formally. Yes, I think that we should be more structured in that. Commander Flores, myself, Chief Tingarides, and Paulson often meet and talk and look for ways to improve. We also have the ability to have open dialogue and direct reports to the Chief of Police, where he also asks us things he wants to include. So yes, we need to be more forward on that and move quicker.
So in other words, we need to incorporate them in everyday actions. And every day that we come to work here at LAPD, it needs to be incorporated.
Yes, sir. It's culture.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Calanche.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was great. The video, I mean, just the video alone, I think you can recruit a lot of women to the department. Like, it's amazing. Thank you for that. I just want you to know that I am behind you. I'm supportive of your initiatives, of the list of things we need to check off. I do agree with you that it is cultural. And changing culture takes a long time, but I think that the everyday things do make a difference. I always ask about like how things are going, and there's things that we implement and then sometimes fall through the cracks, right? So for instance, the lactation rooms, right? I know that was a huge priority for us, but we may not be doing, 100% and making sure that those are the best spaces in our division or that they're prioritized. The shared work, the childcare, those are things that are really important. If you're a mom, I just spoke, I think she's, I think she works for you, but I spoke to, I believe she's a sergeant, and she said she would not apply or take the test to be a captain because she has small kids. And how can, she's a single mom with small kids, so who's going to watch her child, right? If something comes up in her division. Those are the things, those systemic cultural things that we need to change both on our end as the department, but also in the beliefs of our employees. But I think that in order to change how our employees see these barriers, we need to be at the forefront and changing those barriers and for them to see that we're really committed to it. I'm committed to, I talked to the chief about these issues, and I know that Commissioner Decker was also a big supporter. I talked to the chief about meeting with you and a few other of the high-ranking female department members to come up with some strategies. One of the things that I'm working with Commander Flores on is how do we bring more mentorship that's, if they are the mentors, who's mentoring them, right? So we talked to, I have friends that are connected to women in sports and entertainment who've had their own barriers to overcome, to bring them to work with our department, with our women in our department to share best practices. So how do we connect other resources to our top female employees? Because they are the mentors for the up and coming females in the department. So I just want to reiterate how committed I am to this issue, how committed I am to supporting you. And as a commissioner, just to do whatever we can to break those barriers and those biases that are, whether we think we have them or not, do come out, right, in our everyday practice. So, yeah, you have my support. And thank you again for this great presentation. Thank you, Ms. Cano, for your trailblazing and your leadership. And I know that you're very humble about your contribution, but just think about all the API employees that are looking up to you right now, and the API women in this department that are looking up to you right now. So thank you for all of the work and the trailblazing that you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Calanche. Commissioner Bonner.
Thank you very much. I'll just pick up on that last point briefly with a question. And when I was looking at the video and listening to some of your comments, and we had an opportunity to chat briefly before the meeting as well. My question to you is when you think about, we were talking about the photograph, where you were on the line with the other women in training, and has the department progressed as much as you would have thought at that time? I'm trying to reflect on how you were thinking when you came into the organization, and when you see how far things have evolved now. Would that be further than you thought? Would it be not nearly as far as you might have thought, or about what you would have thought?
I think the first 21 years, it was high. We accomplished a lot. But today, I think they've accomplished a whole lot, the women on the department. I think it's wonderful.
So you feel encouraged?
I'm sorry?
So you feel encouraged by the progress? Encouraged by the progress? Optimistic?
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely.
Great, thank you, thank you. The other questions for Commander Cortez and maybe Commander Flores as well. And this is a comment on the evolution of some concepts, the main one being equality versus equity. So the current conversation is about equity, whereas probably when Officer Cano came into the department, there's probably a lot more discussion about equality. but those concepts have kind of evolved. So I just wanted to understand if that's accurate, that those concepts are evolving. And one in particular that I spend a lot of time thinking about when I hear it occasionally is, and this is sometimes talked about in the context of promotions, for example, where you hear discussion of the importance of command presence and what that means to people, and people probably have some instinctive reflection on what that means. But this is kind of the question: is that concept and others like it evolving as they should, or are they still somewhat, of a drag on the progress you're trying to make?
I think that it's evolving, but even with this study and listening to what Joyce said in her video and looking at this study, women still feel they have to work harder to overcompensate to feel qualified for the job. So when you're looking at that, equity versus equitable, I think there's still that pressure that we may put on ourselves to be the right jobs, the right fit, and to have that command presence or be in positions that will help further advance us.
So I think in a lot of the trainings in schools that I'm presenting at within the department for our field training officers and supervisors schools, we do have a conversation about equality, and that equity, it should be the status quo for everyone. Much of you talk about culture, and today we're talking about tradition and perception of women leadership versus male leadership. There are conversations that are being had that quality and traits of women are valued, and some of the language we're using is changing as well, where, traditionally men are not described as having strength and grace, or usually they're described as being very, having command presence. Sometimes women aren't given that characteristic or trait. So some of the conversations that we're having just internally among our women, also in the promotional seminars that we're giving, is we need to value the traits that women bring to the table. And our scoring system, our rating system, our promotional process should reflect that and be congruent with the goals of the department, which is diversity, community engagement, just leadership regardless of gender. So it's a slow moving ship in terms of how we turn things around. But the bottom line also is we're encouraging our women to promote and to seek positions they necessarily would not traditionally apply for. And to Commander Cortez's point, we want women to have the confidence to do so. Not to say that women need to be fixed or that we lack confidence, but when you do see women promoting or seeking positions that are traditionally not held by men, that creates empowerment and inspiration for other women. Just as important as it is to have Joyce here with us today, to see what she had to endure back then, and she's very humble about it, but I'm sure it was not hard. I mean, it was not easy. It was very difficult. She did have kids, and at one point she put her career on hold to raise her family, and then she became a detective. So it's again supporting one another, women supporting each other, and also having the ability to have women in the room when those decisions are being made so that we can advocate for one another. And if we're not, then we rely on our male counterparts to be our allies and to do that.
Appreciate that. The other question relates to what I'll just refer to as the support infrastructure, if you will. And I'm thinking in particular, there's a conversation broadly about a lot of the mental health challenges people in society are facing, including some commissioners, in terms of just managing the stress of the day-to-day life in where we've been in recent years. And some of the conversations I've been in recently have been around the people having access to mental health, or what we refer to, I think, as behavioral health capacity, and the ability to talk to people who may reflect who they are. So, and I don't have my own strong views about this, but the question really is kind of, are we keeping pace with having enough female psychologists and others available to women who may, in some cases, on some issues, may feel that they need to speak to another female as opposed to a male. And that's a reality, much as, you might find some men who are going to feel more comfortable speaking to a man about certain issues than they would a female.
Yeah.
So just the question of, is that what I'm calling the support infrastructure, is it keeping pace with where it needs to be?
I believe so. We do wellness checks as command officers on an annual basis, and my actual psychologist that I check in with now many years is the female psychologist. And I do feel comfortable. It is nice having that female voice to discuss different, health changes, family issues, career issues. So I do think we do have that support there. And we also have Dr. D, Dorian. He's fantastic. We can't, he's very open too. So I do feel we are supported in that mental health arena.
We do. We do. In fact, last week I just spoke to at our peer support conference, and we have a really robust peer support group. And they do talk about wellness issues, current topics, and they were very interested in hearing from me as the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. And I spoke about Commander Cortez and our role. But I think there's something to be said about LAPOA, our organization, because in my travels and speaking with women from across the nation, I've learned that a lot of other departments don't have the internal infrastructure that we have. Chief Moore has been very gracious with allowing all of our employee organizations to have free rein to all of our staff officers. He's made himself accessible, but we have taken a vested interest in ownership for our own health in our own employee development. Just last week, I received a phone call from an officer from a small neighboring city who is one of 5 women in her department. They've never had a woman promote past the rank of sergeant, and she's reaching out for help and saying, what do we do? How can we help one another? They feel at a loss. So we are fortunate that we do have women that are very active to help one another, to reach out, to mentor, or just be able to pick up the phone and vent and speak to one another. And we've developed partners with other agencies that do have women organizations at the national level as well, so that we can continue to offer that support. And we are their voice. I always say, I don't know what I don't know. If the women aren't coming to us to voice what their concerns are, what's important to them, then, we can't push it forward. But fortunately, we have a very open forum, and we continue to make strides. And our motto is, we didn't come this far just to get this far. So I tell Joyce, you did not come this far just for us to get this far. So we continue, and our work continues ahead of us.
Thank you. I just close with a comment about just my brief reflection on the conversations I've had with women in the department. And one thing that comes clear in all of those conversations, or at least most of them, but I'd say all of them, is really the very strong fundamental commitment to the mission, which is to say that I have not, in one instance, discern any difference in that commitment to what it means to be a police officer and in law enforcement today. And so I think that really speaks well of you can talk about all of the equity and inclusion and everything else, but the seriousness of the work is ever present. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. I have a follow-up question, probably both for Commander Cortez and Commander Flores. Recently, the department adopted or began the ABLE program. And all of the command staff, as I understand it, are supposed to, have gone through some of the initial training. And the ABLE program is not just intervention out on the street for patrol officers. My understanding is that it is also for intervention when you see something wrong within the department itself, such as discriminatory actions, harassment, any of these types of actions that make you feel less, and when I say you, I'm talking to the women of the LAPD or any other group that feels that they're targeted, make you feel less than you are, or make you feel that you have to do more than you should have to do than your counterparts do. You should be able to bring that to your commander, whoever your supervisor is, without threat of retaliation. This is supposed to be part of the change of the culture, Commander Cortez, that you spoke so eloquently about. So I hope that this is something that is going to become ingrained within the LAPD, because this is one of the purposes it was brought to the LAPD, for this precise change. So I would like a report back within 3 months to see how well it is going, not necessarily out in the streets, but internally within the department itself, for that cultural change that we all want to see. Is that something you can do?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you all, and
Commissioner, if I could? Sure. Just, I want to echo some of this, but also draw some emphasis. Let me also identify Captain Kelly Muniz and her Media Relations Division. The one of the measures, I believe, of understanding cultural shift and where we're at is productions such as you see here. These are started with a couple of ideas, some talking points, and a framework that is then left to the artistry, if you will, of the personnel from media relations. And for them to capture the moment, as they clearly did, your heart and the number of others who have viewed this, speaks to the fact that I believe we get it, both men and women. There's been, and I'm proud of the history of this organization, and Detective, thank you. Joyce, you have been a stalwart to always be there to remind us of our history, in the history of not just being one of the first women to become a police officer, not just a police woman, but to take that task on in this very stereotype, very male-dominated, biased organization. As I shared with you this morning, when I started 40 years ago, just the open hostility that existed. For you to have endured through that, I think your word of resilience speaks to you very well. And then to be the daughter of parents that were interned during World War II, and to actually be born in one of those internment centers, and to see the racism, the hatred that this country provided. Didn't just endure, but it actually was an author as a government during that World War, and in the aftermath of that. To be here today makes me a proud American, because it speaks of the ability, no matter what as an individual has come your way. Maybe it's happenstance. I don't believe in happenstance. However, got you to this, to in front of Hollywood High School. I stood in front of there as a detective, to try to be a detective in 1986. So it's the connections are always there. But to see your path and for you to come back, we so much enjoy reminding us, and actually reminding the next generation, that our work's not done, that we have farther to go, but we stand on the shoulders of people such as yourself, and the sacrifice and the dedication, and not taking no for an answer. And so you found the window in the wall. You continue to have done that, and you set the mark for us. I want to thank LAPOA and LEAP. As I reflect at times in life, I look back the last 5 years, and one of the first tasks that we did to improve one of the three major issues, which employee satisfaction, was equity and a promotional process and an ability to promote based on merit. But that also to build and deepen our diversity and representation against the stereotypes of like, well, you have to be this in order to be that, and what the informal practices were. I challenge the employee organizations to take this on themselves, because that's also a shift in culture. I've said, I'm not the author of this, but culture eats policy for breakfast, lunch, whatever. The reality of the matter is you can't make rules on this. You have to have waypoints within a path, but it takes from the ground up as much as from the top down for us to make material changes and lasting changes. And the task that the employee organizations have done has been to has been huge in regards to actually making the continued evolution and amplifying it. Your efforts of mentorship, your efforts of identifying testing processes that were causing challenges, that were causing unnecessary obstacles, the support for one another, and the preparation for both recruit all the way through the senior levels cannot be overstated in how important that is. What's needed for going forward is a couple things I would say. The real work is still in front of us. Part of it is stereotypes. We've had them even here today, that we tend to associate certain behaviors based on a gender, when in reality, be humble and kind is not a gender orientation. To be graceful is not a gender orientation. We tend to assign them that way, and that's a cultural issue. And that's why LAPD lives within a larger culture of our profession and with a larger culture of the American society. So our challenges are to not be overwhelmed by those, but to influence them and be that changing. But part of that's our narrative also of when we think we're dealing with a man, that their hubris is what got them there, or a woman, that their lack of feeling of worth is what's keeping them from someplace. When in reality, I've seen those roles reversed based on the individual, where the hubris of a woman has gotten that individual to be judged in a certain way as a deterrent, and the humility or lack of confidence in the man has underserved them. Reality is, I want us to move forward, and I think part of that is acknowledging that for all of us. But it also, the two last prongs that I know Commander Flores knows is on my mind is Commander Cortez, is job sharing and the development of a full-time capability for child care that supports the needs of families, men and women. And both of those are going to require financial investments. They're going to require money. When we look at what is stopping both those issues, it's the ability to garner resources, financial resources, to make that investment. There's nothing that materially keeps us from opening up a child care center but for location, and but for staffing, and but for the funding that's needed, that's affordable and that attracts people, and is predictable so that when you're a parent, you can say, this is going to be here, not this week, but it's going to be here 6 months from now, a year from now, so you can make those career changes. Secondly is on job sharing. Job sharing is going to take a restructuring of the way in which we look at policing as far as the sworn personnel. Pensions, benefits, and it's going to take an investment to incentivize people to participate in that, where it doesn't jeopardize their ability to make that house payment or meet rent or be able to pay the other obligations, childcare, that a parent will still need. So what I look at in the last 2 years on this initiative, on this path, is that those seem to be the obstacles. So I look to the support of this commission, to our elected officials, to bring in those resources. Because while the Police Foundation has work, and the LAPPL is working with the Board of Police Commissioners to try to find funding, I think that if we want to, as we look to change this, we have to recognize as a government, as a public agency, that this is going to take a specific commitment of resources, and then I know that these men and women who are committed to this will take it off, and it'll be a tremendous success, and those impediments that are currently holding us back they'll evaporate. We'll still have cultural issues we have to deal with, work processes of a person job sharing, but we can handle that as a department. That's stuff we can do 2, 3 over a course of 2 and 3, 4 years. It'll become as normal, if you will, as acceptable, as desired as it is today to have a woman, 2 women working in a black and white, which, by the way, 20 years ago would have been prevented, and today there's not even a distinction, and that's what I look for this further progress. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to identify some other individuals that are important, and then I want to thank every man that's a member of LAPOA, every man or any individual, whatever their identity is, that's a member of this effort. Because as a member of the PERF board and full supportive of that report, what has also gotten us here is the support of men who have seen the wisdom of removing those barriers and we'll need that commitment moving forward.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. And thank you for this presentation. Commander Flores, I'm going to ask you to stay seated because we're going to go to item 5C rather than 5B at this time since
Yes, sir.
you're present with us. Thank you very much. Commander Flores, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. That was a good segue. So much of what I was going to say was pretty much highlighted in my prior report, speaking on the Blake Justice Consent Decree and how far we have come. So I know you have the report before you, but I just want to highlight a few of the strides that we've made and the successes over the years. For the purposes of this report, the department was mandated to report on women and minorities. And in this report, in the consent decree, minorities are Latinos or Hispanic and our African-American employees. So during this last fiscal year, our African-American employees, our sworn ranks, is 9.2%. We have 52.4% Hispanic, and our AAPI and Filipino employees are at 11%. And our Caucasian community, or white, is 27.1%. As of this report, our women stand at 18.6%, with 81.4% men. With reference to our recruit officers that have commenced the academy training and that have graduated, we have graduated, or actually 27% women have commenced the academy and 28% have graduated. So there's a difference in numbers. If you look at your chart, there's on some lines there are zeros. That's simply because they commenced the academy but then graduated maybe in another fiscal year. So that's why you may see zeros there. Regarding academy attrition, the top reason for women attriting or leaving the academy was due to an injury on duty. That number was 4. The top reason for men was that they reevaluated their career choice. The total attrition by gender is 38% of women and 63% males. So although the number is quite high, that percentage of 38%, the attrition count is actually low. It only is 32 individuals in that category. The top reason for employees attriting during their probationary period, which would be after the academy, would be resignation. So we said we had 6 women that represent 26% that left the department or resigned, and there were 17 men, 74%, for a total of 23 during this fiscal year. And there were no terminations during this fiscal year. And then lastly, when it comes to promotions or women, 24% of women have been promoted to the rank of captain. 31% of women have been promoted to the rank of lieutenant. And 28% have been promoted to detective. So I think those numbers are in line with our 30 by 30 goals. Certainly some work to continue to work on. But I think in light of the current landscape of law enforcement, I think the LAPD certainly demonstrates that there is still room in improvement because that 18% mark hasn't moved in years. But in consideration of what we've done in recent promotions over the last 2 years, we have made a considerable increase. And we're seeing women in different specialized units, different positions, more so than before. But certainly in the upper leadership ranks, we're lacking there. So that is, speaks to the action items that Commander Cortez mentioned this morning. that this is definitely a joint effort and something that we have to keep our eye on the ball, and it has to be a consistent, intentional effort. Thank you.
Commander Flores, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First, you indicated that there's a 26% attrition rate of women who are on probation. The reason given for that attrition is resignation. What's the real reason? I mean, they may resign, but were they asked to resign for some violation? And rather than take a termination, they were asked to resign and they then did resign. Is that what's going on behind those numbers? Or did they just figure, hey, this is not something that I want to do?
I would have to speak to allow our personnel department to speak in depth then on it, but from my conversations with some women that have left the department, or in just my experience from working under OSS in years past, is that sometimes it is resignation in lieu of. It could be based on their performance during their probationary period. So they would resign in lieu of being terminated in hopes of getting hired with another department. Sometimes it just wasn't for them. I mean, it certainly goes without saying that police work is not for everyone. And I think even when you look at the number of men, there were 17 men that left for resignation reasons, but only 6 women left for those reasons. So I think without having the exact reason for their exit, I wouldn't be able to, I could only assume.
Yes. Chief Choi is here in the audience. Chief Choi is here in the audience. He can speak to this. This is an area that resignations, any separation, we can get somebody, as we get qualified applicants to the academy, we work very closely to understand resignations, even terminations, failure to perform, as to what can we do to better prepare the candidate. And that includes also expectations of what they're going to find once they get here. So Dom, Chief Choi, you want to address this?
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chief. So I look at all probationary resignations, terminations, and just sign there. What I have seen is a variety of reasons. When you see resignation, it could be because they're getting unsatisfactory ratings and they choose to resign because in lieu of termination. But we also have several probationary officers that resign because there's a different career choice. So they're either going to another law enforcement agency, or we've had one that pursued a professional career in athletics in Mexico. So I see the whole gamut. I will tell you there's not a higher number of women leaving because of unsatisfactory ratings compared to men. I think it's just, there's a variety of reasons, and I think they're all very personal to those individuals, but I don't see a trend of unsatisfactory ratings for women probationary officers compared to men.
What we have done the last 2 years, you want to speak about firearms remediation, homework, if you will, side work, and supportive mentors.
Yes, so we do offer significant mentoring or remediation training and opportunities for those individuals that show areas that need improvement, whereas historically in the past, we would test them twice. If they didn't pass second time, it's failure and you get terminated in the academy. But there are several opportunities for people to improve their performance, both men and women, to, I guess, pass probation successfully. Prior to coming on, and even in the hiring process, we have significant programs, our CAPS programs, where people get, women and men, but women primarily get trained or get prepared for the academy physically, in their firearms proficiency, and just in their studies academically. So a lot of mentoring programs are in place to not only track candidates, but help them through the hiring process and through the academy.
Chief Choi, would you expand on that for a moment, the CAPS program you mentioned there? Sounds like it's similar to what the military is now doing with some of their own recruits.
Well, so these are after-school programs, if you will, but they're evening programs primarily, or weekend programs where people will come on their own time, but be trained by our department personnel, our instructors, on areas where they need improvement. We see a lot of participation in physical fitness, where people come I believe it's two nights a week and on the weekends where they can train in running, push-ups, whatever it may be, to physically prepare themselves for the demands of the academy. And then they also have that for academic proficiency in other areas.
And once they're through the academy and they're in this probation period, what type of additional mentorship outside of the training officer is provided, particularly for female officers, since that's the topic of discussion right now?
I'd have to look at.
Is there any type of program? You mentioned that they're given some remediation
So-
if they're deficient in some of the training skills that you identified during probation, and you provide that training to them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Is that a formal program, or is that just one officer mentoring another
No,
officer?
there's a formal program. So in the structured probationary period, so after somebody graduates from the academy and is in the field with the training officer, if deficiencies are noted, those deficiencies are addressed by the training coordinator at the areas as well as the field training officers. If those deficiencies can't be addressed there, they are then sent back to the academy for remediation on a particular topic that they're deficient in. So there's several opportunities for the probationary officer to relearn a topic and become more proficient as they're tested during their structured probationary time in the field.
And is that held against them as they move forward in their career? If they correct the deficiency, is it held against them?
No.
Thank you. So my next question for Commander Flores was going to be the following with respect to promotions. And you can stay, Chief Joy.
Don't be so quick.
You don't have to move because you may be answering this one too. I've heard anecdotal evidence, for example, similar to what Commissioner Calanche mentioned with respect to some LAPD officers who are at a sergeant rank, but I've heard it more from the lieutenant rank and then the promotion up to a captain, that there are a number of impediments, and it doesn't seem to be driven necessarily by gender. What I've heard, and that's why I have you here, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. What I've heard is that that promotion to captain is a huge leap in terms of career development for any officer, man or woman, because of the responsibilities that they're going to be thrown into immediately as a captain. And some simply choose they don't want to do that. I mean, so that's an identifiable barrier. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it is. It certainly, the rank comes with sacrifices. But I have to say, just personally speaking, it's not simply just the internal structure, but it's your external support. You know, we have to rely on our families, and I think women have to be able to say, hey, I need help, and be okay with, creating your own village, so to speak, for childcare, pick up kids from school. Getting called out in the middle of the night as a captain is it's going to happen. You have to plan for it. So you have to have some of those things in place that the department really can't do for you. Where are you going to take your child in the middle of the night if you get a call you have to respond to a scene? Unfortunately, I have my mother and my sister who live very, very close. I have good neighbors, so I have my internal infrastructure. And yeah, I've had support from the department as well. And there's been times where, there's emergencies happen with our kids, and we have to be able to turn to our allies, our male partners, to say, hey, you know what, partner, I'm going to be late, or I have this. So we work together, but it's difficult because women don't want to do that. Nobody wants to be that woman that says, oh, I have childcare issues, or I have, don't want to miss my kid's school play, when a lot of the times our male counterparts have a spouse at home to do those things. So it's a balance. And, we ask for, I think we all know that it comes with that sacrifice. And I've had women tell me, they see me with my 2 cell phones juggling, and they say, see, I don't want any part of that. Some people just don't want it, but those that do find a way. But we do have to at least create pathways to give them the tools to succeed. And we, as a department, and that's what our employee organizations do, is we're there to help one another and to lean on each other. You know, I've brought my kids to the station before, and, you know, I have another officer babysitting them while I'm doing something. I think all of us, even the men here, have done that. So it certainly is, you know, a family affair here.
Great, great. Final question from me. I understand that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but LAPOA has mentorship programs to help women advance and promote within the department, and I mean all ranks within the department. Can you speak briefly to that?
Yes, so LAPOA and our other affinity groups within the organization, we really pride ourselves on mentorship. We offer scholarships and scholarship reimbursement, for tuition reimbursement, for us to continue to pursue training and opportunities outside the department. But the mentorship really is something that we do want to be more involved in for officers in their younger years. So right now we do mentor candidates that are coming on the department in partnership with recruitment. So we're able to help these women come on the department, answer those questions about childcare and what's it like being a woman working patrol, all those questions that they have. But we also we want to focus more on our probationary employees, our probationary officers. So we have been doing more outreach for our younger officers. We do our annual symposium, and what Commander Cortez briefly spoke on was that series that we did where I think for the first time, have not seen women actively, intentionally mentoring the way we are now. And if I showed you the flyer that advertised for it, I mean, it's impressive because it's nothing but women staff officers. And I think it's important to recognize that because there is years, you know, and it still probably happens now in some organizations where there's a stereotype that women don't support one another. But I'd say that is not happening in the LAPD. I think we're really, we have an obligation to do so and to mentor, and we are reaching out and tapping on each other's shoulders and say, hey, what are you doing to help? We have to be part of the solution. So there certainly are many opportunities, and I can't take all the credit for LAPOA because our other affinity groups are doing the same in terms of mentoring at all levels. And we're doing it together.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioner Kalante.
Yes, thank you so much. I do want to say, Chief, I think that having a DEI officer and a women's coordinator is really important when we talk about women supporting women, right? Or the affinity groups really having a voice. So that was a really great move, so I applaud that. And your commitment. I do want to share, President Briggs, with you a project that came about as a result of women in the department advocating for more support. Councilwoman Rodriguez set aside some funds for the affinity groups that about $200,000 strictly focused on supporting the advancement of the minority officers and women in the department. So I'm working closely with Commander Flores right now to develop some projects that are going to be fruitful, that are going to give officers, all officers actually open to everyone in the department, with the goal of building some new skills for our, I mean, you talk about some of the lower ranking officers that, you know, might spend their entire shift in a car and not have the ability to lead projects or to gain leadership skills because, or managing other people. So those are skills that are necessary, not just in building their skills and professional development, but they're also things that officers can point to during their orals, right, and interviews for prospective promotions. So I just wanted to share that council and the Public Safety Committee and Councilwoman Rodriguez set aside those funds. And right now we're working to develop some, I would say, really cool, innovative strategies to think outside the box, to build, also build this feeling of like, I wanna get involved in learning new skills versus just a presentation. Because we do that really well. We do workshops and presentations, but how do you roll up your sleeves and get some new skills? So I just wanted to share that that's something that's new, and there's been some hurdles in figuring out through the city attorney's office like how to spend those funds. But I think we've cleared, I think Chief Choi worked with us to try to clear those obstacles, and I hope that now moving forward, we can get some of those projects underway. But these are being led by Commander Flores and her team, so it's pretty exciting. And we hope that we do a good job so that we get more money next year. Yeah.
Thank you for your support, ma'am.
200,000. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Talanche. Commissioner Bonner. Commander Flores, thank you. Chief Choi, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have the Inspector General's report on the Department's system-wide mental assessment response team and domestic abuse response team programs.
Good morning, Commissioners, Department and City staff, and everyone listening to today's meeting. I'm going to be joined today from the OIG by Police Special Investigator Samuel Colina. Sam was our lead researcher on this project. Around the time that a motion was introduced to City Council requesting information about LAPD's SMART and DART teams, as well as about the potential expansion of those teams, Commissioner President Briggs requested that the OIG also conduct some research into these invaluable parts of the department. OIG staff put together some background information on each unit to provide context, gathered data on call volumes and response times for mental health and domestic violence-related calls over the last 5 years, and also participated in a ride-along with MEU personnel to gain some first-hand knowledge of SMART team operations and challenges. Well, Sam's going to provide a lot further detail in just a moment. I can tell you that the OIG's primary conclusions based on our research will likely come as no surprise. The department's SMART and DART capacities should each be expanded as soon as feasible. It is abundantly clear that a significant number of LAPD calls involve a person who is experiencing some effect of mental illness or has become a victim of domestic violence. Given this reality, it's critical that the department do whatever it can to maximize the number of times its response to such calls, include trained clinicians and/or civilian advocates as appropriate. Failing to respond with these resources does a disservice to those who are experiencing a mental health episode or who are being victimized by a domestic abuser. In other words, people who are often in the greatest need of multifaceted help and support. As you will see, our recommendations also call for accountability mechanisms with regard to both SMART and DART units and furtherance of maximizing the efficiency of their operations. To give you more detail on what I've just talked about what we learned and how we reach our conclusions, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Colina now.
Investigator Colina, I think the boss just promoted me. So good morning, honorable commissioners, Chief Moore, Executive Director Mr. Tifank, City Attorney. I'll be providing an update on 2 department programs as the Inspector General mentioned. So the first one will be, can we pull up the presentation, please? So the first one will be on the system-wide mental assessment response team, which I will refer to as SMART going forward, and also the domestic abuse response team, which I will refer to as DART moving forward. So the City Council motion, which contemplates the expansion of these 2 programs, requested the following information. So background information about each program, the volume of mental health and domestic violence related calls per year, response time data for each type of call, and additional SMART and DART resource needs. So the SMART is actually a subunit of the Mental Evaluation Unit, or MEU, which operates out of this building. So MEU reports to Detective Bureau. MEU's primary role is to assist field officers with mental health-related calls for service. So MEU's subunits consist of a triage desk, and this particular unit operates on a 24-hour, 7 days a week basis. And their role is to record any department contacts with persons experiencing a mental health crisis. This is documented on an MEU incident report. Also, when requested, the triage desk can provide field officers information about any prior contacts when the field officers are in contact with a person whom they believe to be experiencing a mental health crisis. The triage desk can also refer persons with multiple contacts to the MEU's Case Assessment Management Program, also referred to as CAMP. So the CAMP unit is it's an investigative follow-up unit which consists of the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health clinicians and also MEU officers. So CAMP's role is to link people with mental illness to mental health resources. Its goal is to mitigate the risk and possibility of future violent contacts with these individuals between the community and our first responders. Then the MEU also has a training unit. So this unit is responsible for providing mental health related training to our field training officers, our 911 dispatchers, our custody and security services personnel. And the training unit also provides the department-wide mental health intervention training, which we refer to as MHIT. This is a 40-hour post-certified course. And so to date, from 2014 to 2023, there have been approximately 5,600 students that have completed the MHIT course. And then finally, what will be the focus for the rest of this, the MEU presentation is the SMART units. So SMART was established in 1993 and is deployed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So a SMART unit is composed of an LAPD plainclothes officer and an LA County Department of Mental Health clinician. So you can see what the MEU officers wear in this particular photo. It's the individual wearing the beige pants and black shirt. So SMART's primary goal is to facilitate effective engagements with persons experiencing a mental health crisis and to connect those persons to appropriate services. So when deployed, SMART units are assigned to one of the department's 4 geographic areas. So they meet here first in this building where they have roll call, and then they roll out to an area. So one thing to note is a SMART unit is not restricted to work only in a particular bureau. In 2021, I think I'm out of batteries here. Can you click on the next slide, please? So in 2021, the SMART switched to a co-response model in which a SMART unit is dispatched together with a patrol unit. And this was meant to reduce response times. So this slide shows you the criteria that would meet SMART response. So if the subject is violent, if the subject is armed and the public is at risk, if there is a welfare check that is called for, the subject has possibly committed a criminal act due to mental illness, and the subject's behavior is high risk. And lastly, it's a catch-all, there is a critical incident in which SMART may assist with de-escalation. So prior to the co-response model, a patrol unit would request SMART on any critical incident, such as a possible barricade, a jumper, or a crisis where the psychological status of a subject, witness, or other involved person was in question. So this next slide provides statistics. So the council motion requested statistical information on the volume of mental health related calls. So we pulled data for the last 5 years covering 2018 through 2022. So you can see what the figures look like pre-pandemic and then 2020 going into 2022. So on a 5-year average, the department received 32,233 mental health related calls for service. And then the 5-year average for mental health related calls that met a SMART criteria was 20,234. And SMART was able to respond to about 37% of these calls. So this chart shows you what the current resource needs are for SMART. So currently, MEU runs 11 to 14 SMART units per day. Its desire is to expand to 24 SMART units. So this chart shows the number of personnel that's needed to reach this goal. So we have 36 LAPD employees that are needed and an additional 31 clinicians from the LA County Department of Mental Health. So the expansion is contingent upon the Department of Mental Health hiring additional clinicians, in which this happens to be the program's biggest hurdle and challenge. And this is due to competitive salaries being offered by other sectors in the industry, more appealing work hours, and you get perks such as telehealth, where you get to work from home. And so it's an uphill battle, but this is more on the LA County side. And then once we do get these numbers, once we do have the additional personnel for SMART units, the desire is to have a larger facility, even something off-site from headquarters here. And then with that, there would be the additional equipment such as vehicles and then the mobile data computers. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? So the other program that was mentioned by the council motion was regarding the DART program. So the DART unit is 1 officer and can have up to 2 domestic violence advocates. So the goal of this program is to provide education, resources, and follow-up services to those who have been affected by domestic violence. So a DART unit is composed of an LAPD officer, either in plain clothes or in uniform. That's dependent on the area commanding officer. So the DART program is more autonomous. It's the commanding officer who determines their hours of operation, whether or not they roll out in marked or unmarked vehicles, and how their officers are attired. So advocates, the civilian advocates are required by the state of California to complete a 40-hour domestic violence training course. So let's go to the next slide. This chart displays the volume of domestic violence related calls for the past 5 years, again, showing you the figures before the pandemic and after. And then unlike SMART, DART currently does not operate under a call response model. So a DART unit is generally on standby until requested to respond by a patrol unit. And then on a 5-year average, the department received 41,389 domestic violence radio calls, and the 5-year average for a DART on-scene response was 1,906 incidents, which is about 5% of domestic violence calls. So when a DART unit is not available to respond to the scene, either because they're tied up with a call or if they're not working that shift, patrol officers are to advise the victim that the department works with community-based organizations that can offer them a variety of services. So if the victim would like to request these resources, they are advised that they would be contacted by a DART unit within 3 business days. So this statistics here shows you the DART referrals from patrol officers, which is a higher volume and number. With regard to DART expansion, I was advised that there are no current plans for expansion. DART has been around since 1994. It was started off in Van Nuys, only in one area. A few years after that, it expanded to 77th Street area. And then in 2015, it expanded to the rest of LAPD. So DART is implemented in all 21 geographic areas or police stations. So with regard to resources, I was advised that a portable mobile data computer would be a great asset because this would allow our DART units to monitor radio calls while they're at their assigned station. They could look up details of the calls and they could decide to self-respond. So that would increase the number of on-scene responses. And then can we go to the next slide, please? So the council motion also requested information about response times for mental health related and domestic violence calls. So this slide presents patrol response times for the mental health related calls. So radio calls are categorized into 3 different codes. It's either code 3, code 2, or low priority. So a code 3 call can have one of the following elements. There is a serious public hazard, there is an immediate pursuit, the preservation of life is a factor, there is a serious crime in progress, or the prevention of a serious crime is needed. And for code 2 calls, this is a designation of an urgent call, but one that is not life-threatening. And then a low priority call is anything that's not coded as code 3 or code 2. So if we click on the next, so this shows you average, this is median response times for both mental health related calls and domestic violence related calls. So I was advised that the department currently does not capture response times for SMART and DART units, which brings me to our final slide, which is the OIG recommendations. So first of all, with regard to the SMART program, expansion has been in discussion for over a year now. So last year, MEU had planned to expand to 17 units. Earlier this year, the discussion moved that number up to 21 SMART units. And currently, their goal is expanding to 24 SMART units. And then can we click on? So as I mentioned earlier, there's no plans for expanding the DART unit, but the recommendation is this is something the department should consider, given currently that the DART unit only operates 4 days a week, 10 hours per day. So there's a lot of times when they're not available. And then thirdly, the department should begin tracking response times for its SMART and DART units, right? Especially when we're talking about expansion, adding more personnel. We want to see how these numbers affect response times when we have more personnel added to these units. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll ask any questions you may have.
I'm just going to very quickly say thank you, Sam, and welcome to our colleagues from the department, and thank you for helping us gather all this information to put together for the presentation today. Sam, if I did promote you, it's because I appreciate very much the time you spent on doing this, so it's well earned. But thank you, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So my chief question is, it does not appear that we are answering the city council's question, which is, what is the response time of SMART units to mental health crisis calls? Is that correct? Because we don't have the data.
Yes, sir. We're not particularly tracking those right now. That would be helpful to do. Along with those calls, typically an ACAR is assigned as the primary unit. And so when you see those response times to those types of calls, there's a radio call that's generated. And that's the time for the police car to show up, that you're seeing those response times.
It's the police car, but not the SMART unit.
That's correct, sir.
So then the second question is, since we do want to increase the number of SMART units that the department has, what is, and this might be for Chief Moore, what is the department and or the city doing to coordinate with the county to increase the number of clinicians? Since that appears to fall, the clinicians appear to fall within the ambit of the county.
So thank you, and thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate the insight that the Inspector General's office brings to this and observations as well, and they match ours. And we are supportive of the recommendations, including, I'm not satisfied that we're done with getting the response time for SMART teams in DART units. Both those details have unique unit identifiers. So we'll work with Chief McMahon out of ITB and with Chief Choi out of OSS to look and see what the communication system can do. As it is not a standard capture now, but that does not mean that the program can't be challenged to come up with that measure. And I think it's a fair ask, and one that we capture 1 billion data points. Let's add that one to it to demonstrate just what these numbers demonstrate, which is an absolute substantial demand and opportunity for the department and for public safety to benefit by a co-response model, whether it be in domestic abuse or it be in instances of mental health. We are, on the latter point, working alongside the Department of Mental Health. I have an upcoming appointment to speak with their interim director. But in my tenure with previous director, Dr. Sharon, and us shared frequent conversations about the desire to see DMH be able to attract and retain qualified clinicians that would be willing to work alongside us. The capacity of both these programs is entirely dependent on the lack of outside resources, whether it be DART providers or it be DMH clinicians. I do want to thank Mayor Garcetti in regards to during his tenure, his administration, one of the key elements when it began was to ensure a DART resource was in all 21 areas. And what we could use today is that number could go to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'm confident that if we had clinicians, that we would have, we would prioritize again, and it would impact field deployment, but it would impact field deployment in a very valuable way, is to have the continued presence of DART resources. And the similar issue for mental health. Scarcity of uniform officers is accurate, but I believe that as Mayor Bass is committed to restoring hundreds of positions, that as those hundreds of positions are brought on board, a prime opportunity to build out the co-response model by bolstering investment in these two areas. So I look forward to us doing that, and it is one of the metrics that Mayor Bass has given the department and myself, is to achieve on the DMH side. And I look forward to her discussions with her, and I know she has met with victims advocates on the domestic violence side and is similarly committed. It's a matter of priorities, and it's a matter of getting them stacked and in order and then implemented.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Bonner, any questions?
Yes, thank you very much for the report, and it's kind of a high-level question. Just trying to put in context, we were talking earlier about alternative response and the Metro Ambassador Program and all the rest, and then you have, in addition, the PPL's list of things that they would like to see officers get disengaged from. And I'm trying to sort all that out to understand the areas of overlap and distinction. So that's kind of the question: is SMART and DART a subset of the alternative response discussion, or is it part and parcel of the same discussion?
I can start, Commissioner. To me, maybe it's subject to some interpretation. To me, it's a subset. It involves police responding with civilians of specialized expertise. The reason I think it is a subset and I mentioned when you first asked earlier in the meeting that there's overlap, but I wouldn't call it necessarily a perfect or a complete overlap, is that I see these particular calls as requiring highly specialized skill. These are people in sometimes quite serious need of assistance, and you may be able to say the same for a model that involves civilians doing traffic enforcement, just for example's sake. Yes, that's important too, but to me it's a different animal. It's a different thing that we're talking about when you discuss someone who's having a mental health crisis at that moment, maybe a danger to themselves or others, or who has been victimized by domestic violence and needs the right expertise and resources there as soon as possible and a full complement of those resources. So my answer to your question is, yes, I do think it's a subset of the combined response in some form or another by law enforcement plus civilians. But these ones I think are special because of the dire circumstances that happen and the need for absolute expertise. It can't just be anyone who goes out there. It's got to be someone who's got the training in domestic violence, who's got the training in mental health. And so I think they're a special subset for these two. That's my best interpretation of it.
When you look then at and I'm not going to go into any detail in the charts that showed the volume of calls and so on, but again, just big picture speaking, when you look at it from that standpoint, is this a big part of the picture, or is it? I'm thinking of alternative response I'm going to use that as the broadest term. Would this be a big part of the picture, or is it a specialized subset? Smaller. And well, let me just add your reaction to that first.
For me, it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder of what people consider important, what people consider that officers should or shouldn't be doing, what civilians should or shouldn't be doing. So I think it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. But if asking me the sheer number of these calls, which can very quickly result in harm to a number of people if they go wrong, and the sheer volume of them, to me says this is a extremely highly important part of that discussion. It is a critical part of that discussion because it's a substantial number of these calls every year the department gets.
And Commissioner, if I could add to this, in your conversation, in law enforcement today, in public safety, we look at a spectrum or a continuum of the need, and in that need, there's 3 basic buckets: police only, police and clinicians, a multidisciplinary team or co-responder model, and then just the clinician outreach or social worker, if you will, that can provide services and support. The area in which the department, I'm proud of our work in 30 plus years, is that we've been a model for SMART and for DART as to amplifying the critical role that a co-responder model provides. It provides a niche, a significant portion of work that needs a police presence because of the dangers that Mr. Smith has indicated, the constant and unpredictable nature of how those can quickly accelerate, and an officer's presence will safeguard, offers the best opportunity for safeguarding what would otherwise seem to be a challenging but workable solution. But there's a safety net. The aspect here is that what we've seen is an over-reliance upon just a simple police response, and then only meager existence for the hard work of attracting qualified and capable individuals willing to work the hours and shifts and job designs that make up the co-response model and the outreach or alternative non-law enforcement model that so many advocates are pursuing. And we join in that pursuit. Today's presentation speaks to, in part, a response to an incident where an officer involved shooting with the death of Mr. Smith. His widow was here today, in which a person experiencing a mental health event and had a prior would benefit by a co-response model. And from that event, which, as we know at this point, it appears that resource wasn't called, and we'll continue to investigate that matter. But it's critical that when we look at this, well, where is a co-response model and why wasn't it there, is we look to the instances in which we see how frequently they're called in the Los Angeles Police Department. And in 2022, over 31,000 mental health related calls, of which the 22,000 were actually went asking for a SMART unit. So more than, 2/3 of those. But SMART was actually only able to respond to 1 in 3. And that is an absolute issue, as this report indicated, of capacity of the staffing that we have and the obligation that frequently entail these type of calls. So it's a discussion that says, I'm taking the opportunity to talk about the larger model and where this fits in, because I think it can be distracting as to, well, which part of the continuum is this? Is this going to fix everything? No, but it's an important and critical element, I believe, as we move forward in policing is that we build, bolster, and deepen the co-response resources as much as we look to the non-law enforcement response and build, bolster, and deepen it. Both those areas need to strengthen. If they were, and as they are in instances, they're demonstrating a less reliance on the enforcement-only model, which we all strive for, because that will give us time to stay focused on our primary bit of work.
Well, I understand and appreciate all of that, and my suggestion would just be that there be some thought, one, to trying to lay it all out so that all of the people who are involved in these conversations can really understand which conversation they're in, number one. You need to calibrate expectations really as to what can occur, largely in part in addition to the cost, which I would suggest that you try to use this data at some point to extrapolate and identify put some numbers to this. But you think about all of the work and the time that it is in government service anyway to simply create a job classification and define, what that is, and that takes time. There's going to be likely issues around labor issues as to who's in which classifications and bargaining units and all. I mean, all those things are down the road, but the point just being that I think the expectation is being created that this time next year, the reality in Los Angeles is going to be that you're going to have teams of people doing things next year that LAPD is doing today. And to me, this seems like it's going to be a very, very long process to not only build the capacity, but then you get to the point the Inspector General is making as to the conversation about priorities. That some are going to think the domestic violence is a high priority, others will think mental health is a priority, others will think something else is a priority. So just encourage you to use reports like this and data to continue to fill in the gaps of knowledge that are going to be required for people to really make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. Commissioner Kalante.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. I don't know if I wasn't paying attention, sorry, but I didn't get to hear what department or division or, I'm sorry.
My name's Jay Mastic. I'm a commander with Detective Bureau.
Detective Bureau. Okay.
Yep. And this is Lieutenant Larson, also he's with MEU, and Detective Personella, and she is with the DART unit. She's with DART
Oh,
Domestic.
wonderful. Okay, great. So I have some questions. So it seems like we have a DART unit in every division, but we don't, if there's a DART unit that's not actively engaged in a call, they don't respond to another call from a different division?
That's accurate. So there's one DART unit assigned to each of the 21 areas, and they work a 410, so they work during this window of time.
So potentially there could be a call that needs service, but this other unit doesn't respond to that.
That is accurate.
Is there a reason why that would be an issue? I'm just curious. Because sometimes we do share, like when we pull other officers out, we share officers that would work a different division.
It would be the advocate. They're on contract with the city of Los Angeles to serve geographic areas. So the contracts oftentimes don't, and I'll give it back to the detective who actually oversees that.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I could answer that question regarding why that specific car with that specified police officer and that DART advocate service provider cannot respond to a different division, because within the department, there are 6 service providers. And because there's a special MOU, and they're all kind of dependent upon the needs of every community. They were chosen by the mayor's office because of their specific needs and resources that they're able to provide the community. And because of that, it's almost very tailored to that specific community. And because that officer is assigned to that specific division, it would make it very difficult for them to move that, especially if that is not within their geographic responsibility. And most of these service providers basically ask to be in a certain geographic community because of the language skills that they have and or some of the shelter options that they have that might be available in one specific place versus another. So it's just
that was how they had originally
Seems like a
designed it.
bureaucratic issue, when this could be like a, like life and death issue, right? Where if we had someone that was available at one division that can go respond to a call that no one is available for in another division.
But what they're, just as a reminder, this is not the SMART detail, this is on the DART detail.
The DART, yeah.
They follow in, and what happens is, you'll refer back to the report, the follow-up care, victims, survivor benefits are time and place, and so you have the immediacy of that, but then there's also follow-up appointments for facilities and the distance that could be involved. And the complexities of that is, do we then hand that person off to someone else, and then the person is traumatized again because their services for, say, who's Harvard?
But if no one responds, there's no handing off of anything.
No, but let me stress that there is no instances, you'll see the referrals, that there's no instances in which the survivor, first of all, if there's immediate need, we have officers in our existing training without regards to DART, we'll get that survivor, we'll work with DART providers to get housing and supportive housing and services, and then the referral goes to the DART provider off hours so that they'll do follow-up care. And now, it's notwithstanding that someone's in the DART unit in Southwest is clear at this moment, and then 77th has a call, and now that DART unit, because the DART unit of 77th is busy, the Southwest unit responds. The volume of these calls is Southwest could very well have a call in the next hour
Yeah, we get
that the DART unit is, we're a bit of chasing our tail because we're trying to take this finite resource and move them all across the city. This is an effort of to do specialized handling of victims and survivors in a manner that they reduce the bureaucracy. This is largely an issue of not having enough DART providers.
I hear that. I think we do need more, but I don't know if there's any DART units that are like not deployed, and then there's a need in another division. So I'm just bringing it up.
Sure.
Right? As a former service provider, like if I'm serving one division, sometimes a division abuts another community that it's like you're in a different division, right? So some communities have two divisions. So just something that I, as a service provider or as a community member, would love to see kind of a discussion around.
I don't know how frequently it occurs. It's something we'll certainly look at.
Yeah, But I realize that there's a need for more DART units. A couple of other things, my mind and brain operates as like a problem solver, so bear with me, Chief. So one of the things I thought of is in my role at running a nonprofit for kids, there's always a need for clinicians, right? Most of the time you can't afford a clinician because they have to be highly compensated as they deserve to be. So one of the things that a lot of the nonprofit organizations have done is there's a lot of clinicians that are on contract, right, that do work with different organizations. So since you're meeting with DMH, I think that might be an opportunity to have a cadre of highly skilled. Some of them just don't want to work in a DMH setting or in an organization, but they are clinicians that do, they might do private practice, right? And many of them do contract work. So that might be an opportunity to get highly trained clinicians that are in private practice to become part of a cadre of clinicians that might maybe rotate in to some sort of program where like they get trained to be, in a unit that where maybe the obligation is like four deployment days a month or something like that. So I would just throw that out there.
The mayor is working with us together to whiteboard this to find any option. We're looking to bringing clinicians back on an overtime basis. We're looking to form our own cadre, if you will, outside the county DMH structure, if that's viable. So it's a full court press to identify resources and what current impediments might exist for a scarcity of a resource. This is a challenge we have not just here in Los Angeles, but across the country, is a dearth of qualified mental health clinicians to do very important work.
Yeah, and then the last question, you mentioned the need for the mobile data computers, right? Can you tell me what those are, or why?
Let me have Lieutenant Larson address that.
That was a DART request, right? For that one there?
Right, DART, yeah.
So the mobile data computers, those are for the individuals, and I can help that, and you could share it. I work in the field just recently. I understand that's where the importance is. They can able to gain their resources and their information through the computers. These individuals, these departments, the DART cars that are currently responding to calls usually are in plain vehicles. They don't have that type of equipment inside those computers and built into those cars. So having the mobile data computer will help them do their job at scene through these investigations.
So that would be a specific LAPD computer, or just a computer?
It would be a specific LAPD computer that would have to be configured to the way that we normally do business. But with regard to the DART component, the officers have indicated that having those mobile computers inside the vehicles would help them with regard to restraining order issues. So if they had, the computer with them, they would be able to see whether or not someone does have a current restraining order and whether or not they'd be able to also print a copy of an emergency restraining order if they needed to within their car, or make a copy of it, so they would have a copy. So some of those issues have been addressed in the past, but something that they currently don't have because they don't have that capacity in a plain vehicle.
We're taking advantage of the Inspector General's latest report. These officers all have body-worn videos, cameras that they wear as part of their uniform. They also, with that, have a phone that has a smartphone that has the mobile digital terminal on the phone. So we're reminding them of some of the technology they have. Again, we welcome these snapshots, whether it's department-led, individual area-based, or the Office of Inspector General, and we're going to build from this to make sure that officers understand what tools they have, the desire that they have. For instance, the issue of a printout, if you will, that is a challenge in all of our vehicles, the ability to print something out physically, but certainly they have connectivity with their phones with a mobile CAD, and everything that is available in that MDC. But we'll, again, for creature comforts, we'll also look if there's a vehicle that is being underutilized, that has that added tool, we want to provide that.
Would a laptop that has connection to the department work, instead of having to go through the expense of getting an in-car computer with that?
We have iPads and some others that have the VPN that can work through those. And that's, again, I think the benefit here is that in a survey, working alongside with some of our personnel, the Office of Inspector General found desires, officers, we'd like to have this, we'd like this aspect of their work. We'll be tending to that now in receipt. We got this report on Thursday, and I know the team is already working at the senior levels to address the perception of that they need these tools in order to get their job done.
Okay, that was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Calanche, and thank you, everyone, for this presentation. At this time, I move that we approve the Inspector General's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We also have a housekeeping matter. I move that we approve item 5C, the department's report with respect to the Blake Justice Consent Decree. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go into closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 6A and 6B in accordance to Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
Commission has concluded its work. Item 6A1,
law enforcement-related injury number 015-22. Commission, on a 3-0 vote, adopted the chief of police recommendations, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 sergeant 2, 3 police officer 3s, 1 reserve police officer 2. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 3s, 1 reserve police officer 2. Less lethal use of force in policy, 2 police officer 3s, 1 reserve police officer 2. Item 6A2, categorical use of force, 016-22. Commission unanimously adopted the recommendations of the chief of police, which were tactics, administrative disapproval, 2 police officer 2s, non-lethal use of force in policy, 2 police officer 2s, lethal use of force out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2. Related to item 6B1 and 6B2, they were adjudicated. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. There being no further business before the Board of Police Commissioners, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
See everyone on April 4th, as we will not have a meeting next week. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.